Yes, Everyone, welcome. I'll start today's proceedings with the whakatauki, Amudia Kia Whakalonga Hoki, as always, onwards and upwards. I have an apology from Councillor McAtamaney. He's going to be here within the next half hour. Councillor McCoskey is going to be here within the next 5 minutes, and I've heard nothing from Gaynor. Has anyone heard anything from Gaynor? I'll take the two apologies for lateness, then Councillor McAtamaney and Councillor McCoskey. I'll move it. Can someone second, please? Second, Councillor Payne. All those in favour? Aye. Those against any urgent items or late business? Declarations of interest? We're into it. Thank you, team. Oh, and also welcome staff, welcome councillors, welcome Richard. Good to see everyone here for what will be a challenging day, I suspect. We'll start with the item number 1, confirmation of the annual plan hearing minutes. Pretty straightforward one. Was there any discussion before we put it, get a recommendation?
Happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Anyone happy to second? Councillor Kennedy. All those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Those against, thank you. There's Greg and Trey are up the back. So we've got the investment fund update. Quite a critical area. Greg, Trey, is there anything that you wish to add to your report?
You need to be at least at one microphone, Greg.
That one's on. Check it's on. It's got a green one. So, yep. Yeah. I'm happy to take as read unless there are questions or discussion.
Questions for Greg, please. Councillor Valwell.
Thanks, through your worship. Sorry, Greg.
It's all good.
Just looking at the balance of the funds there, which 27 odd million. Just further over, we've carried over committed invest surplus, carried it forward for community projects. There's about forgotten the item number, but it's about $900,000. Is that that $900,000 included in the closing balance? So the funds that we've committed would have to come off that closing balance.
Yes, that would be right. Yes, until we took it out, it would still be within the closing balance. That's right. Yep.
Sorry.
Until we withdrew it, it would still be in the closing balance.
Okay, so the closing balance effectively is 26,200,000 to take those.
Yep, that's right. That was the
funds off.
Correct.
Further questions for Greg, please. What I was hoping as we go through these initial segments of today was that we establish how much we've got to work on. The last thing I want to see is us today, yes, yes, no, and getting to a figure that we don't have the money on. So consequently, I have been looking, and Greg, there's a figure of 1.22 million for applicable allocation of reserves and interest as budgeted. So we've got our depreciation accounts, and I went and talked to Greg and Trey earlier on this week because, so we've got all the reserves and all the different funds. What interest rate do we pay to them? Is it the 4 or the 5% or what? And I actually found to my surprise that the interest rate that we pay on the reserves is 2.04%. It's an interest rate that was calculated 5 or 6 years ago by John Scott. And consequently, if it was 5 or 6 years ago with the whole world having changed since then, the amount that we allocate in interest to the accounts, as I said, is up for discussion. Because obviously if we allocated 1.02% instead of 2.04%, there would be considerably more interest than we would have coming this way. Welcome, Councillor McCoskey. Please be noted, Councillor McCoskey has got to the meeting. So, yeah, it was a figure that John had come up with, 2.04%, in a time like this, because could I see in a rainy day year like this that no interest was attributed to the funds? No, probably that's not right, but then it's just a figure. So I'll throw it out there if anyone else is interested as well. It's no use pursuing if there's not mass interest. John?
Was it an inflation figure at the time? So I was thinking how he would come up with that figure to keep that account active and not growing, but keep it active day by day. You just use an inflation figure at the time, wouldn't you?
I don't
That's
know.
what you do today. If you said, you had $1 million and I want the equivalent in 10 years' time, you'd attach inflation. Keep
That
inflation
wasn't
adjusted as you went. That's
Greg, are
It's
you
got to do
able
with
to
our-
say
with our-
how John calculated that figure?
Just on that, it's actually 3% budgeted in the annual plan.
Sorry?
The interest allocated reserves is 3% as budgeted.
It's not that 2.04%.
That was from last year's annual report. Yeah, so it's actually 3% for the annual plan.
So consequently, it's changed. What about the change?
Your worship, if you look at, just an answer, if you look at page 18, the thing you need to know is in that picture there, and we take it through, is that the return received was less than budgeted because the budget was over 5%. We got 3.23 in total, right? Which meant that there's 1.255 million available. However, rates disbursement takes 800,000 out of it. So you have to do the rates disbursement, the rates subsidy. That leaves 455,695, right? And that is a return around about 1%. And so what happens in those circumstances is that when we don't achieve budgeted return, the reserves and that only get the return that's achieved. Like let's say there was a year, we've done it before, where actually we made a complete loss, right? We have to take out the 800,000, so we were taking out of equity. That was what the rules were, and the reserves got zero return, right? So the reserves only get budgeted return if the budget is met or exceeded, and obviously only get the return of whatever is achieved when you take out the 800,000 and what's left. And so the pictures are not quite the same as what you're suggesting. There is only 455,695 of actual surplus. When I say surplus, above no return in terms of cash, that's available, and that only comes to around about 1% in total in terms of that. So the point would be that the reserves would then get that allocated to them, and it would balance out as a consequence. So what you're then saying is, well, is it valid to make a decision that the reserves get zero or some other things, and you can play with the 455? Well, that's a decision you can make, but you've got to remember that the reserves, are a mix of special trust and other things, not just depreciation reserves and things like that. So it is a choice, but the amount you're talking about is quite substantially less.
That's what I was heading towards. We've got so little to play with, and there was a figure that had been calculated. Well, I talked to Greg and Fred the other day, some years ago. But if you wanted to give no interest to the reserve accounts there, it's pushing. I know it is, but let's establish where our bottom line is before we head on into the day. Does anyone have a appetite for further discussion on this, or we move on? I don't see that. Councillor Ludeman.
I don't know if it's now or when. I have an appetite to kind of know when we're going to, how we deal with some of these community requests that are actually fair to all communities. And I don't know when we discuss this, but like, I'll go back to last year. One museum was declined funding for wages. One museum got funding for wages. To me, that wasn't really fair across the board. So I don't know where you have this discussion, but I think we need to think about being fair to, we've got different swimming pools and domain boards or, facilities wanting funding, And instead of, I mean, I know we can debate each one and we will debate each one as we come to it because it does depend on the financials and other parts of the submission. But whether it's now or some stage, there needs to be a bit more, I don't know whether it's a policy or guidance so that all these groups are treated fairly, and it's not just by district that we have a battle on because it's whatever district. And, yeah, I want that. It should be across the board. There should be a fair way of doing it. So that's, and I don't know when
very, very similar to where I am, Alison, that we're at the start of the game and we're going to set the rules.
Yeah.
First one for me is if I don't know how much money we've got to play with, then how can I make a decision, yes or no, as we work our way through? And I think consistency in our, swimming pool rules, library rules, something rules, that's a fair call, although I had hoped to chew into that individually, although you don't.
Still will be an individual discussion, I believe, but there should be perhaps some definite guidelines around it. And, we might not be able to do it this time, but it needs to be looked at going forward. I mean, if we could do it for today.
Well, let's keep it in mind that we're trying to get consistency. So I don't see a great appetite and, people are clamouring over and can also welcome Councillor McAtammany, note his attendance. If there is a great appetite for it, before we leave this section, what I do ask is I want to be given the exact figure that we've got to distribute today. We don't have to go to it. We may decide, how like we've got the 900,000, well, we could go, there's a heck of a rates rise next year as well. Do we go half? Do we go third? Do we go whatever? But I do want to know before the game gets started what we're playing with. So I'll take it that there's not an appetite to put zero on the, had to be asked though. Councillor Lederman.
I'll start the ball rolling and make the discussion. I feel we put the money over last year, which was great, and why not use it? We can't predict into the future. And you kind of say 1 in 5 years or whatever, you have a loss. Well, we put the money, I think it was a good move to put the money across last year and not use it, but it's there, it's investment surplus, and perhaps it is a way that we can help our various communities this year, and let's hope next year is a better return on the NICO. I mean, you could end up with a huge return on the NICO next year. I mean, I could be reinvested. I'll open that discussion.
Okay, so can we specifically have that, because it is a critical discussion, can we specifically come to a conclusion on what proportion, what amount, the whole lot, none, a bit, whatever, of the NICO 900,000? So Ellie's saying this is the year for the rainy day. What's everyone else's thought? Councillor Catherwood.
Thank you, Your Worship. So there's it's made no return this year. There's zero.
A bit.
No.
Your Worship, it's made a return. It's made a positive return.
Yeah.
But just less than budgeted.
So well less than retaining prudent return to the reserves depreciation. So to me, it's zero. And then we've got the extra 997 from last year. That's unswing. So that would be the maximum amount. There's a discretionary. But then if you were prudent, putting some of that aside as well to actually try and get to the figure of being financially responsible to make sure those reserves are actually growing somewhere near inflation. So if we crunched all those figures, we might actually find we don't have much at all.
That is the discussion. There is the dilemma.
Like, can we return part of that 997 to actually prop up those reserves correctly and get back on budget?
So that we bring it up to what the budget interest rate would be.
Yeah.
What was the gap?
I mean, no, it's all crystal ball gazing.
No, it's not. There is that figure, Greg. How short are we of where we're getting to the budgeted interest rate? 400,000.
Yeah, well, we did an actual return of 3.23%.
Yeah, but what is the dollars amount in, but what does that equate to, that we were short of the budgeted interest rate? No, not percentage, how many dollars? Well, then we take that off the 900,000 and we've got 642, and that's what we're playing with. That's the
That's
number one
being
thing
prudent.
we can bring into the discussion. If you're able to get that figure, Greg,
Yeah.
the 900 and something minus the gap between what we earned and what we said we were going to earn,
Yep,
if you could yell us that one out. Further discussion, team. We're quiet this morning. Councillor McAtamney.
I'm not sure whether it was already mentioned, but we've, aside from any potential withdrawals, at some point in the next year or two, we'll also have agreed to put 2.5 million from investment service through to the multi-level. So that's sort of got to be weighed in where the long-term value of the fund sits.
So that comes off the equity, that comes off the big dollar
Yeah,
amount.
it's still fixed.
Yep.
It's roughly 10% of the capital, so it still affects the capital year.
Have you got that figure, Greg? Sorry.
What was their budgeted return, Greg? 5%? 3%. Yeah, so it's about just about three quarters of that million. Is it?
Yeah,
2% on that.
750-ish. So,
Greg will get it. Any further discussion just while we're waiting for that figure up, Greg? So we know that technically the most we could take if we took everything from the investment account this year would be just over 900,000. We've got another figure. Simon's mentioned that the overall amount will drop, so we have less ability to earn in future years. We are definitely running the gauntlet. Brett.
Didn't Steve say there was something else to come off that 900,000, which brought it down to about 459,000 that was available? So,
Sorry, through you, Your Worship. No, I was referring to the return for this year. The figure that's being quoted, the 997, relates to what was given back last year from the profit. So we didn't spend all the profit last year on discretionary items, and council said we'll put this 997 back into the pot. So all we're doing is opening the pot back up again and saying, hey, this might be available as a result of returning last year.
What's everyone else's thoughts, Steve? We're pretty quiet on a critical.
Well, we have a policy, and as with all the workings out there on page 18, we've still got the 991 to spend from last year, regardless of the way it's worked out this year. But we don't. It's not a target. We don't have to reach it. We don't have to sit here all day trying to spend it.
No, that's not what I'm saying, John.
No, but
If people want to make it even less, then I want to know at the start that if 991 is not the figure, if someone's saying, hey, we should only be using half of that because of next year, then I have a figure in my head of 450 or what Dane said. But I do want to establish what the figure is.
2% of the gross thing.
Councillor Kennedy.
It's great to know figures at the start, but my concern and worry is as you work through a list, if you're at the front of the list, well, yay, you might get a yes. If you're at the bottom of the list, the totals run out and sorry, yeah. So my concern is, like Ali said right at the start, there's so much out there at the moment. Everyone is struggling and struggling big time. So it's been one of those horrible years that right across the board, doesn't matter what sector where anybody's in, that everyone is struggling somewhere. And yes, our ratepayers have been knocking on the door about the spends and about cutting the flowery things out. But I'm sorry, it's those flowery things that keep our communities alive. But like Ali said, I have a big concern about we're not the same everywhere. We're all over the show with what we give to and what we're not giving to. And of course, there's some big ticket items coming up here too, and we have already committed to our Milton swimming pool. So yeah, it's going to be a hard one today, but I struggle with that. Yeah, I know that it's always nice to budget to an amount, and that's how we should live our lives. But then it's also hard when you've got so much out there in our communities, and it can break a small community if you just all of a sudden pull funds big time. So we need to tidy up our background work and our wording on policies and our guidelines, so that as councillors, as we get chopped down to 9 next time round, it's going to even be harder to sit and discuss of how this works and how that works. Or maybe it's just a new way, a new start. I'm not sure, but yeah, it is going to be a difficult day.
Your Worship, just to add to that one though, just be aware that there's two effectively community funding reports. So you talk about first and first served, just be aware that there's still the community plan projects to also consider when you're thinking about the dollars. And then the only other thing I'd say is we have made them in order of largest to smallest deliberately, because if you decide to support any large funds, you're basically knowing that there's not much left in the kitty. So it makes a big difference, the significance of the community request.
Yep. Yeah, but Steve, when I was adding up last night, it was about 1.2 million if we went to the max. If we've got 900,000, then in my head I've got to say no to about a quarter of them. If the team say we're only going to use half the 900, then I can only say, I've got to say no to half of them. I'm going to start doing that filter at the start of the day, but if I don't know what the figure is, I don't know whether I'm trying to cut out quarter, half, or all of them. It's all I'm trying to establish is where the figure is before we start lining up. Because if I go no, 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 and then everyone's going, but I would quite happily spend 900,000, I've stuffed up. John, and then go to...
But you're saying then you're basing almost 100% of your decision on whether there's dollars available or not. It should be, and I actually agree with what Councillor Luton said before. Michelle and I talked about this on the way down. It's almost like we need a philosophical debate. Because if we start supporting one domain or one playground or one club or whatever, then we've got to do everything. We seem to, it's just getting a little bit untidy for me. Swimming pools are a classic example. We've got, and Dane's asked for there's obviously some work being done, about a report and a workshop on that. But I'm just going back to you're saying that all the money's available and yes, we're everything's and it's all quite easy. It shouldn't be just, it's not just a financial decision.
A lot of it is financial, John. If we haven't got the money, then we can't say yes. It's for the first time now.
But also,
if we have the money,
say yes to everything.
You can't, John. We're looking at 1.2 and the maximum we've only got 900,000.
No.
So at the very max, we have to say no to it.
I'm not going to argue, but at the start you said if we had the 1.2, then we could say yes to everything.
No, but we haven't.
Hypothetically, you said. But anyway.
No. 1.2 is the requests.
Yeah.
1.2 requests, 900 potential. We've got to start saying no. But that aside, this is the philosophical conversation that we're getting bogged down. I'm going to go to Greg before I go to anywhere else.
So
So
the budget return would be 1,727,470. So that's 5.25% of the 32.9 million opening fund value. So the actual return was 1,063,934. So there's a difference there of 663,036. That's the amount below budget we earned.
It would take a whack out of it if we kept that account relevant.
Your Worship, and councillors, I say you need to look at both reports coming together. There's discretionary decision around the second report, which is the community planning stuff. There's over 800,000 of carry forward investment surplus funding being requested for these groups to continue, right? And you should and you would be looking at those critically and saying and asking the question, are these necessary for next year and things like that, right? But also remember that if you're saying yes to it, then in theory there's another 880, nearly 900,000 coming out of the investment surplus from that. And then there's on top of that, there's just over 200,000 of actual additional requests from the community plan stuff. So when we talk about first and first served, we can't write a report that picks all that up in one report. You've got to be aware of the 1.2 million that His Worship's saying, the decisions around 800,000, which you can make as to whether that assists anything in terms of the investment surplus, and also the 200,000 from community plan stuff. So that's the total picture you need to be aware of when you are then making your decision around, when you're starting your decision around community funding.
I'd add to that probably in that, with Simon's comment about we've already committed 2.5 million to the Milton swimming pool. And that shouldn't really come into the discussion today because we have, and I know it's going to come out, but we've actually agreed to that previously. So that's almost going back on a previous recommendation. To be fair,
That's the same with the community plan carry forwards.
The same
We've already
as
budgeted,
them,
done that
we've
last year.
budgeted. 2.5 million's been budgeted to come out, is those 800.
Yep.
Oh, so quite to the end figure from Greg, had we been prudent and we contribute to our reserves correctly, we do the right thing. What is our actual figure then? What's this? What would our 997 reduce to?
630. 330.
328.
Three, how much?
300. Well, if it's 663, then
So being financially,
nothing. Well, 300,000.
at least 300.
Okay, well, look,
So
I
the
suspect.
comment I wanted to make,
Yeah.
the actual comment I before Greg came up and spoke, is when if you invest and you don't get the return that you are expecting, you'll only realise that loss in that return if you withdraw that investment. So you've got to remember that, there's a chunk of change here. We're in an investment cycle at the moment. We're in a dip. There's a worldwide dip going on around. So it could all turn around, and if you want to keep taking from it, when the good times come, you get less out the other side. And that's just cycles, investment. So I'd actually like to today be financially prudent and do the right thing. It's going to be tough enough with a 16.6% rate rise over the average over the district. So I really want the starting figure to be nailed down before we move further on, so that we can make some good decisions and do the best we can to support our communities. But I want to do the right thing by the whole community by being good with our money, making some good decisions. So we should be depreciating and we should be putting our reserves away properly. That's being financially correct.
That's everyone's thoughts.
It amazes me that there's people that are asking for money, but most of the people that wrote in, they were wanting us to cut spending and be prudent. And I agree with Councillor Catherine with that. We need to be really prudent. Like people are struggling out there. There's communities that aren't asking for any money. They haven't asked for any money. They didn't ask for any money last year. But there's other ones that are, and there's one that's a lot of money they've asked for. We're not going to be able to keep everybody happy, but I just, they're looking at us in here today and they're saying, what are you guys going to do? We've been telling you to stop spending. We've been telling you to this is where this gets decided today.
Yeah, but what's the amount you're thinking of? We're trying to establish sorry, team.
Was there a figure you said of 330,000? That's prudent.
A lot of silence coming out of you guys. We're not going to move on. I'm at the point where I'm almost going to have to move on, and we're going to come to a real chug at the end of the day. I'll say what my thoughts were last night. I looked at where we were this year. Yeah, let's face it, 24-26% in urban. Next year we're higher. So if we use it all this year, that's not prudent. So I'm thinking 900,000, so it's half. 450 this year, 450 next. That was where I thought. Then what Gaines brought up, hold on a minute, if we even got back to true zero this year, we got to top that account back up. So that means we go half of 350, so we're down to distributing 150, we're right in the corner. So consequently, I'm probably, how the heck after all those requests from the community for really good projects to keep the vitality of our wee communities going, can we go right down to 150? Everyone's silence is really worrying me though, because it's now we've got some hands up. Good. So I'm going to go to Ken, John.
Thanks, Your Worship. Look, we all know we've got to be prudent this year. My concern would be actually saying we're going to spend 330,000 full stop. We've got to have some wriggle room on that because we're not going to be able to balance that 330 neat. I'll guarantee when we make our decisions today. So I think I personally, I'm the same. I think we need to make some savings. We need to work out what we can and can't do, but let's not put a 330 top line on it. Let's leave a little bit of wriggle room.
So Ken, I wasn't thinking an arbitrary figure. What I'm trying, we know that we got 1.2 as the baseline of requests. If we go 330, then I know I'm going to say no to 3/4 of them. It ends up about there.
I hear that.
Otherwise, we're going to overshoot it. And I'm not trying to get a precise figure. I'm just trying to work out how much the knife goes on. Councillor John, followed by Dave.
Can you just, then you talked about a figure of 150, we have the 300, where'd that come from? You just said.
So if we took the amount minus what Dane was saying of the 663, so 900, 600,
330, yeah.
330. So if we divided the money like I thought originally, that we use half this year and half next year, we would only have 150.
We've already future-proofed ourselves because we put 600 back, so you wouldn't have it again. We've already put 660 back into the account.
You've only equalled it. Yeah, it's not.
Well, we're still within policy. That's well within policy.
Oh, the whole lot is dry. Dane.
Yeah, so appreciate what Councillor Haynes brought forward there. I've got no issues about that, not capping it and using the exact figure, but as long as we around the table understand it's about, we're doing things correctly. It's about 330, right, which is the starting point. I've got no issues where Councillor Herbert's coming in and saying, well, hang on a minute, that actually is available. So that actually is available this year. That's doing the right thing as well. But also when we go through those decisions, does it always have to come from the investment surplus? Does it always have to come from that fund? Well, your communities and the requests that they've got there. You can make decisions, you can change those recommendations and make those decisions of where that funding application comes from. That might come from within your community facility, or you want something best in another department. So it doesn't always have to just come from that one fund. And when Brian says I've got to say say no to 3/4 of the people, well, no. Someone might have applied for 200,000. They don't get 200,000 today. They might get 50,000. But they go out and find the other 150,000. So I think a good starting point is the 300. It's a round figure. We don't lock it in, and then we battle away from there and make good decisions, support our communities where we can, and maybe look at alternate ways, whether it's a rates impact or a community facilities rate impact or UAGC impact or something. And then we just go through the day like that.
So I'm going to move forward, and I thank you because I now have some degree of understanding of where the tolerance is amongst us as to where we're going today. Not exacting science, but where we're going. So it gives me a better picture. Where are we going back with Greg's one? Have we got a recommend? Yes, we have got recommendations of plenty. Is there anything further you wanted to comment on, Greg?
Oh, no, it's not, no.
Okay, so let's say we go through and we'll just start ticking them off. I'll take the red. So all the way through today, I think pretty much all the way through I'm taking individual recommendations so that we can focus as we go. So the first one's that we received the investment fund update report. I'll move. Someone second, Councillor Catherwood. All those in favour? Those against? Then we note 1,063,000. We'll just note that councillor Herbert, seconded councillor Wheeler. All those in favour? Notes the 997. Councillor Herbert, seconded councillor Lublin. All those in favour? And then decides on the application of funds as follows, or defers the decision of the application of funds to the individual decisions report. We've had a bit of a decision and a rattle around how we see this one going. Councillor Wheeler.
I'll move that council defers decision on the application of funds to the individual decision reports. I think we've got an idea.
Yeah.
Don't want to put an exact figure in. We've got an idea where we're going. We can make any final adjustments after.
Done. So I'm happy to second that. Any discussion on that just before we nail it on? But all those in favour? Those against? Thanks, Dean. Got there in the end. Rural water scheme. Oh, thank you too, Greg. You right, Ellie? You don't want to adjourn for a couple of minutes?
No, I'll be right.
Rural water scheme, Greg, back to you. Anything to add?
Thank you, Bishop. I do have a couple of things to add to that report, which I'll just read out. So just in previous years, we've had a number of capital project changes that were discussed and recommended by the Rural Water Scheme committees at the AGMs. So this year, we actually only had one capital adjustment for the Moa Flat Pipeline Renewal Works, additional budget of 250k. It's included in the report. There were some of the changes that were made to the draft annual plan budgets and the financial statements that were approved by the committees. These mainly consisted of updates to OPEX budgets such as chemicals, non-routine expenditure, O&M routine sampling, etc. Where actual expenditure for the current year to date was looked at in these categories. And in some cases, budgets were increased or decreased to give a more accurate depiction of what we would expect to spend by year end. Some further funding of capital was made for reserves where available, rather than loan funding, in order to reduce interest and principal repayments and therefore rates. And also just to note that there were a number of carry forwards that will be coming up later in the agenda that were requested for a number of the rural scheme projects that were subsequent to the AGMs that were held back in March and April. So just noting that a choice will need to be made as to whether we apply any adjustments to the rural water scheme unit rates as a result of these carry forwards, or whether we retain the unit rates as previously approved at the AGMs. So I don't know, Jules, whether you had anything to add to that or...
Yeah, I suppose just the quantum of the carry forward impact was, I think it ranged from $0 to about $27 a unit rate for the rural water scheme. So it's in the further report, but it'd be good to get clarification. And if that's the case, we would add an additional recommendation to this report, those reductions from the carry forwards be applied in due course. But that's obviously council can debate whether you wish to do that.
You want that done now, Jules?
Well, we can do it once you've gone through the rural water scheme once, but I think it makes sense because it's noting in this report that the rural water scheme rates as they are may change slightly because of those carry forwards. So, for example, two of the high ones, one of them's the Balmoral to Rebecca scheme rate, and Sharon's got them on her spreadsheet. That's about an $18 reduction in the unit rate. The other one, that's the highest one, is the North Bruce water rate, which is a $27 reduction. And all the rest are less than $18 a unit. But it is about 0.5% of rates overall, isn't it? 260 odd K. Oh, Wangaloa, sorry. It was North Bruce.
Not North Bruce.
My bad. Happy to answer questions through you, Worship.
Right, so questions please for Greg or the team. I do have one in the report summary, Greg. It says, aside from North Bruce Rural Water Scheme, has not resolved their 25-26 water rate. Have they in the interim? Is there a problem? What's going on there?
Yeah.
So there were some questions that they wanted answered. Ultimately, we didn't get the list of questions to go back and answer that for them. At the end of the day, council actually has to resolve a rate, and what we're proposing is what was presented to them. But those questions relate around other things, and we just haven't been able to get that confirmed list of questions back from them. So as soon as we get that, we'll answer them. But ultimately, they're a subcommittee of council. They make a recommendation to council. If they haven't made it, you still have to resolve the water rate, because we need to set it moving forward for next year.
But yeah, first time in my memory that this has ever happened. Is there something that, is there inks there that we need to know about? Is there something?
They just want some, yeah, through your worship, they just want some more information, and I think Councillor Finch has actually expressed some of those frustrations previously. We have had previous committees not resolve water rates, but they have been resolved by council. Glenkennick scheme, I think 1 or 2 years haven't resolved a water rate, but ultimately council has to set a rate and move forward, and that's what's been done through the due process.
Further questions from the team? Councillor Volwela.
If you want to start looking at specific schemes, is that okay yet? Or?
Yeah.
I was just looking at the Balmoral Tuapeka scheme that's on the budget on page 23 of our agenda. For a start, there is there's an internal water income of in the income. There's an internal water income of 494,000 approximately. Sorry, where are we now? Going across. No, sorry, the figure I'm looking at is for the the internal transfer of urban water, which would be, I presume, is for Lawrence. Of about $2.2 million. It's on the third column from the right.
25-26 budget.
Yeah.
2238.
What's the question, sorry, Bruce?
Okay, I'm presuming A, that's for Lawrence. Just for a start, how many units of water is Lawrence taking from the scheme?
Sharon, was based on a percentage, wasn't it?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
The question is, there's a Lawrence, the urban water is buying water from the Balmoral Tuapeka Rural Water Scheme. How many units is it buying, or what percentage of the supply is it buying?
It's, excuse me, it's 550 units, I believe.
And then further down in the expenditure, it's got the same amount internal water purchase is going out again. Why is that an expense to the scheme?
I think through you, Your Worship, it's a combination of the Waidahuta water treatment plant and the 3 existing schemes. So there's some internal transfers from that we need to tidy up. We're in the process, probably, hopefully next year, getting rid of all of that combination of those things. So some of those should net off. But it's just the way it's currently set up in our system before we transfer across to a single scheme.
Can I get a Simon in there?
Yeah, no, that's might answer my question.
You're right, but Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, those questions were raised at our water scheme AGM, where a few of us were a bit puzzled on that. But yeah, it's exactly as Jules said, it's the old traditional purchase of the water from the Waidahuta and Tuapeka treatment plants. And really it should just be squared up and gone, but as the accounts have done, that's the way it's all sits in there. So it's a zero sum in the end.
Okay.
Any further questions? Oh, sorry, Simon.
Not sure if I understand completely.
The schemes used to, because there were 3 schemes, 4 different schemes, they would purchase the water from the treatment plants. The treatment plants used to have their own separate accounts. And now that's all been wrapped into one.
We've got an answer.
Sorry, through Your Worship, And actually that 2 million is offset down below. It's in the expenses line as well, so it just nets out. The actual Lawrence contribution is the line above that at 400k, which makes much more sense at 550 units. So it's a legacy from having multiple. It's probably should be relabeled, but it's actually a legacy from in our current accounting system. But there's an expense down the bottom that offsets that income, so it nets out to nothing.
Okay.
Happy with that, Bruce?
Yes, no.
Further questions, team? Just so you know where I'm heading actually on this one, despite what I said at the first lot. All the rural water schemes to me seem to be that we could take them as one, so I'm happy. So you're happy to move that, Councillor Herbert? So Councillor Herbert's moving all 10 recommendations. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ludeman, further discussion? Just, yeah.
There was discussion about an additional.
We'll add that
We'll add
afterwards.
that afterwards.
Okay, right.
Did I get a second?
Yeah, let him.
Oh, yeah, because so now we're up to discussion.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have seconded it because I was out for some of the discussion.
Oh, it was just a whole lot of mumbling and
Okay, that's
stumbling,
fine.
Ellie, you're right. You didn't listen to me. I never saw it. Moving seconder, any discussion? Councillor Volwiller.
Yes, so what we're moving and seconding here is, we haven't taken account of those alterations, have we?
No, through you, Your Worship, I'll just suggest we do a separate resolution that would then, they would be amended by any carry forwards or not, if you decide not to apply the carry forwards to the rate. So this would be subject, it would be subject to that adjustment for whatever you decide. So, or you can resolve that resolution first if you so wish, and that way these would be subject to whatever you decide in terms of the applying the carry forward reductions or not applying.
It just makes sense, Your Worship, just to deal with it, put on the paper now, and then decide if you're going to apply adjustments or not.
So I'm going to roll with 10, but then just so that I know, I'm going to an 11th recommendation. Okay, so we've got the 10 recommendations there. If there's no further discussion, put to the vote. All those in favour? Those against. Now we've got to, can you please do the wording for
Through Your Worship. So the suggested wording would be if the council approves or does not approve. Applying rate adjustments to the 2025-26 rural water scheme rates as calculated from capital project adjustments. So in total, it's about 0.5% overall rates reduction, and it's between $0 and $27 on some of the unit rates that you've just approved. So, but that capital adjustment report's coming later on.
So everyone's realising what we're doing?
It's a
Further
positive,
over,
it's
we
a positive
approve it,
adjustment
we acknowledge
to the rate.
They're all going down.
Yeah.
No one's going up.
I'm happy to move it. Someone,
Second.
second discussion team?
As does apply. If it does or does not.
Does not, so yes, sorry. Yeah. If there's no further discussion, all those in favour? Those against? Hold on the tip.
So you approved.
Yeah, we approve.
Yes.
You're right, yeah, we
Applying,
don't.
yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Quick question, Your Worship, just before we move on to that. Do we need anything for that last flat adjustment, or is that?
It's the following year, so it's that automatically will kick in year 2 as a result of whatever expenditures. That was our budget. Yeah, it was in the report about $6 on the unit rate. It's fully expended.
right. Off to number 4, rates baseline update. Sharon, do you have anything you wish to add? Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Your Worship. So since writing this report, we have had some provisional information back from our insurers, and because we had, insurance was a big cost last year that jumped up incredibly. So we've done a bit of re-looking at that, and we added a premium on, and theirs has come back very, very close to what we have, but it's still not what we're going to pay. It's their provisional idea. So, and that's the reason we've added 260,000 to our budget to cover our insurance. But we're on the right track with that. We hope. We've still got to get it yet though. And the other changes to the original rates that we had for consultation was just the estimated operational adjustments from the Rural Water Scheme Committee meetings. And so we've landed at pretty much the same starting point with insurance and rural water savings out.
Questions for Sharon? Can I just get a clarification, Sharon? You said it came in just about where it was. Are you meaning so it's the same as next year or where the budget was? So there's going to be 250, 260
Yeah, I did some calculations based on the premiums we paid last year, then added on 10%.
Yeah.
And then, so hence, that's the extra 260 that we put in the baseline.
Yeah.
And the estimates from the insurers came through last night and they're about 50,000 different, but they're just an estimate. We still don't know the actual cost.
For the old times. Questions, Toes? There's not questions. Thank you, Sharon. Discussions. Councillor Catherwood.
When does the estimate become a quotation?
Sorry, Sharon, are we able to?
So what's their timeline on firming up the actual figure?
We've got a heap of forms to fill out and we've sent most of them back, but the professional indemnity and public liability are the two insurances that they require a lot more information for. We've got to get building accreditation stuff. We've got to provide a lot of stuff, but we're in the process of getting that through now and then they'll get it. We're hoping to bring it to the 12th of June meeting.
Sharon, on page 35, it's got the Three Waters depreciation is at 25%. And I was thinking there was one point where we'd said we'd go 25, 50, 75, 100. We're going to do 4 years or something. But now we're going to, if we go with the preferred option in 2027, are we running at 25% depreciation through to 2027 and gone? Is that the intention or the budget of line now?
It's at 25% for the first 5 years of the long-term plan.
Right.
Yeah, that was a long-term plan decision.
Yeah, thank you.
Just in the structure of the report, Your Worship, councillors, there are subsequent reports that impact on the rates baseline, right? So this is a baseline report. I know there are resolutions talking about council confirms no rate. That can't happen at this point because you are going to be looking at. There are some positive movements around the carry forwards, for example, for capital, right? So that has an impact. That's in subsequent reports. So this was just giving you an understanding of, the baseline assumptions and where we got to, but you've got some other reports that you're dealing with that will impact on the rate. So we aren't looking for you to approve resolution 3 or 4 at this point, because there's a subsequent final one at the end of the process where you come and do that. Yeah.
Okay, so we're just on the 2, remember? And can everyone remind me when we get to the end of the day to go back to page 35? So, discussion primarily on the 2. Councillor Wheeler.
Right. I don't know if it's ready yet, but I was happy to move 1 and 2.
I'm picking that still move, Bruce.
Yep.
So move Councillor Wheeler, seconded Councillor Herbert. Discussion? Realising it's on recommendations 1 and 2 only, we'll sort 3 and 4 out later.
We don't need that or as amended.
No, because you haven't amended.
So we take that out. Bruce, is that what we're doing? Did you get that, Julie? Or as amended? Done. Okay, there's no discussion. We'll put to the vote. All those in favour? Those against. Thank you. Greg, back to you. Carry forwards.
No, thank you, Worship. No, I don't have anything more to add, so happy to take any questions or discussion.
Questions? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, it does have it. Sharon, are you able to give any more sort of information or about the rate saving? And I know we can't calculate it at this point across the various activities, but can you just explain what do we mean by the rate saving?
Through you, Your Worship, yes, I can. I have calculated the saving for if we do every single one of the carry forwards on this list, it drops the overall rates percentage to 15.05, approximately.
Is there a skew at urban rural, or it's pretty much across the board?
There's 500 and, well, 0.5% rural, definitely. Rural water, sorry.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a variety of projects, obviously.
Can you hit me with that 15 figure again, please?
15.05, approximately, give or take.
Nice. Thanks, Sharon. Questions for Sharon, please? Oh, hold on. Well done. We've got Greg. Question. Yep.
Through your worship, I just want to note that because we fund our capital the year after we've done the work, what that reduction does in this year is pushes it into the subsequent year. So we've still got a little bit of work to do to look at the capacity of what we can do. But I just wanted to note that that's the impact of that being carried forward. So it reduces this year, but it goes into next year.
Well, you can pay for it the next
Year 3 was technically looking at just over 9%, wasn't it?
Yes, year 2 current with these adjustments is 19.67, but year 3 is 9.3.
So,
And it's year 4 of the LT.
that's right, and it will depend on how much of the program we can complete this year, as usual, in terms of those sort of impacts.
Further questions for Greg or any other team, please? Councillor Wheeler, followed by McAdamany.
I guess this is more a question for an infrastructure team. But the Milton on page 38, we've got this there, but we way down, there's the Milton manganese reduction. And we've spent 52,000 on that this year, and we're projected to spend another $48,000. Do we need to spend any of that money now? Are we committed to that, given that we're probably going to?
Through you, Your Worship. So we're doing a lot of investigation work at the moment, and we're projecting to spend, I think it's around about 100,000 this financial year in total, carrying forward 1.4 million. Now, depending on the results of those due diligence reports and investigations and sampling, because that's what's occurring at the moment, it's possible we won't require the full 1.4 million, but until those results have come through, I can't 100% comment really.
You want to just comment on the next report though, because we're looking to use that 1.4 million.
So in the next report, one of the options to contribute towards the $2 million that we sort of estimated we need to look for the Milton wastewater stormwater urgent work is to utilise some of those funds.
Yes, I see we're projected or budgeted to spend 100,000 this year on that project. We spent 52,000 now, and there's another, and the rest is either going to be spent the remainder of the year or carried forward. So I just wonder, given the decision that we may not decide not to go ahead with that project anyway, should we spend the remaining $40,000?
So through you, Worship, that work's already committed as advised with professional service providers, and all of these carry forward values are a high estimate cash flow forecast projection. The team is still delivering at this point in time, so these values, it's highly probable they will move. To what extent per project, I can't guarantee, but I just want to clarify that fact.
So that's essentially committed to that $100,000.
Correct.
This year and next year. Thank you. Thanks.
Donna, just before you, just so I've got in my head, the Milton manganese, is that easing up on time just because of the timing of the project? Or is it because of the government's reduction in their regulations that there's no longer the heat on the manganese? How come we've got a bit of latitude?
I'm sorry, through you, Your Worship. The issue with the manganese is about causing issues for the community. It's nothing to do with the government standards or anything. We've had two dirty water events that were lasted for about a month, and that you had deputations in front of council with the impacts on that community. So What we're proposing, we're not proposing not to do it. What we're proposing to do is to, once we have those reports, because there's also a project looking at the capacity of the Milton water treatment plant, to bring them back to you to consider what our next steps are, which may include saying, actually, we think we need to fund this, but there's a risk if you don't do it that we have another event in Milton.
Right. So we're running the gauntlet of another event. We're not running the gauntlet of a litigious.
No,
That's right. That's right.
we're proposing to bring it back to you to look at the capacity as well as the manganese treatment once we have that further information later in the year.
Yep. Different sort of sharp object we're getting pushed by, so that's good. Any further questions for Donna so she can sit down and then we'll go back to Greg? None for Donna, thank you for that. Greg, any for Greg? Too easy, we're letting them off the hook. Just a general discussion team, you can hang around, Greg, please. There's no general discussion and we head into the recommendations. Councillor Volwell.
Happy to move both one, that we receive the report and that the council approves the proposed carry forwards.
Nice. Move Councillor Volwell, seconded by Councillor Payne. Seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against, thank you. Off to additional project funding request. Nico or Donna? This was definitely one of the ones I was going to go through one at a time too. Welcome, Donna. Do you have anything you wish to add to your report?
No, I'll just sort of take Nico's report as read and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Just through your worship, the only noting is that you've already resolved resolution number 3, so that
Correct.
removed from the resolution list.
And I think it's important also, I mean, as a preface to the discussion before everything looks like it's doom and gloom over there, is that, you know, these projects that have come forward are things that are urgent in nature that have to be rectified, and these things happen sometimes. The difference is that we're well aware that we didn't want to add on to the rates burden, and so you'll look at all of the reasons, you look at how we're thinking of funding it is by reallocations of existing budgets. So the teams looked at the carry forwards, and that was part of what they were talking about with that. You know, so in all the events, we've had to pick up a heck of a lot of additional costs from these urgent events that occurred. They're going to get done because they need to get done, but we're not throwing it onto the rates as additional rates. We've done it by looking at existing projects, existing budgets to be able to fund it.
Yeah, I don't set as doom and gloom. We know that there's challenging circumstances and we're moving through it. So I was actually quite pleased as I read through that we had alternatives. So, yes, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to suggest maybe then would it be better to look at item 5 because the other items are relating to that one. If there's any questions or discussions on the first?
Well, the only reason I wasn't was because once we resolve recommendation number 2, then you sort of know where you're going with where the latitude is for the rest. So what we'll do, team, is if we can just move through the recommendations one by one, because there are different nuances with it. So pretty easy one. I'll move that we receive the report. Someone second that, please. Councillor Volwell, all those in favour? Those against, right? Now, if we can, please, the questions and focus could be directed on the Milton Manganese recommendation 2. Questions for Donna? Councillor Herman?
Oh, no, I've got a comment.
Why not?
Well, it's you're reallocating 450,000 from Tapanui stormwater to fund it. I'm not really too thrilled about that. I think Tapanui's shown it's got its fair share of problems with stormwater. There's still parts in Tapanui that don't have curb and channeling, that still have open ditches. And we talked about perhaps on that stormwater funding fixing that. So I'm not over the moon about the 450 being allocated from Tapanui.
Yep. Do you have an alternative?
That's not my job.
Okay, so noted. questions for Donna, Milton, Megan, is that one Councillor Mulwheeler or?
Wasn't a
No,
question.
no. Sorry?
It was going to be a comment, really.
Right,
Really to
seems to be the theme of the day. So.
look, I think there's a lot of work to do on the Milton, the whole of the Milton water supply, including the source at some stage in the future. So I'm happy that we do approve the reallocation of that budget, 1.4 million, and it is available for other critical Three Waters work. And this Milton capacity project to be carried out as well. So I think there's no point keeping that $1.4 million sitting there. Just we may not need it in the end. I think also that staff have were aware of the issues there in the past, and they're historical, and they have been dealt with, and hopefully flushing of pipes and such like, getting rid of the build-up that's causing the issues that's probably coming from the manganese. So if you're ready for a motion, I'll make the motion that the council approves the reallocation of the Milton manganese.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Seconded Councillor Payne. So now it's open for discussion. For me, we know that there's an urgency in Milton. It's going to be addressed, and the others we do have the latitude to delay. So it's a prudent decision. It's not one we would have wanted to make, but it's in this environment the one that we have to make. Councillor Kennedy.
Just have a question then, how far out did we push Tapanui? Because if it becomes a major, then it becomes on top of the list.
It's a 5.
Through you, Your Worship, it is in resolution 5, but what we have proposed is that it's reassessed in the LTP, because yes, part of the reason as well is we've got capacity issues within the team too, so we aren't going to be able to deliver everything. So that would be reassessed in the LTP. If council approve it and it is a priority, it'll be 2 years away.
No further questions or discussion, team? Are we ready to go to the vote? Okay, put to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
All those against? We've done number 3, so we go to number 4. Hold on. That's right. Yeah, that's right. So specifically questions on recommendation number 4 for Donna, please. Councillor Mulwheeler.
Do these supply systems pay for themselves? Like there's an income presumably from them, so they're making an income and they're paying for themselves?
Through you, Your Worship, we might need to relook at the admin charges and the per metre charges. They probably don't at 175k, but we're hoping we can install it for less than that. So we need to find us a location that hopefully won't have a lot of cost to install, but that's part of the site process. We'll need to look at that as well, and the fees and charges going forward.
And just a second question, there's a relatively limited number of places they can be installed in terms of being up to having the capacity to supply a limited number of townships they could be installed.
Yes, it's at the moment. Well, historically, we've only allowed water to be taken from Balclutha rather than very small amounts elsewhere. And historically, it's just been in the middle of the road, and the truck would pull up and they'd throw a hydrant in, and they'd fill up the truck from that, which is not ideal in terms of monitoring what they're using as well as protecting our water supply. So we've got one operating in Balclutha at the moment, and we have another unit, and we're just looking to install it. And probably Milton, but that hasn't been finalised as yet.
Do we know where the most demand in the district is for tankered water?
Well, potentially not, because it's only in Balclutha, but we do know West Otago, for example, the water's coming out of Gore and those sorts of things, if it's drinking water. So, yeah, we do have inquiries, but there's only currently 2 authorised tanker suppliers and the water tank suppliers in the district. They have to be registered with the Ministry of Health and all sorts of protocols and those sorts of things.
We've only been on board on this for 3 years, Bruce. There's only not much demand in West Otago.
Councillor
You still look healthy, John.
Oh, so the first question is, why did we buy two when we only had a project for one?
We actually had a project for two, but there was issues with the siting of the second one where the local trucking firms didn't want it where it was, so it got delayed.
Where was the location for number two originally?
In Milton, off one of the streets near the Ajax Street area where there's industrial on that sort of northern side of the town.
So we paid 60,000 for, and then but then this project's only just turned up now. So it's 175 grand to install it.
If we can do it for less, we will. But if you look at Balclutha, there's a big concrete pad, there's new curbing channel, there's all those sorts of things. So I mean, it's not a target; it's a budget. So if we can do it for less than that, we will. That'll be the aim. But at this stage, we don't exactly have a location, and that'll determine the cost. It is discretionary. You can say no, we're not going to do that, and we don't do it.
Do we really need it?
I would struggle to sell it. We do get requests from people to have more than just Balclutha to where they can fill up. So at least that gives us sort of a northern area for commercial water use.
Is there not a hydrant at the back of the fire station in Balclutha where these tanks could fill up?
No.
Through you, Your Worship, Balclutha is not an issue. We've already got one, and we don't want them filling up from hydrants because it puts this water supply at risk. Linda might have a comment.
Sorry, just through you, Your Worship, you aren't actually allowed to use upstands anymore. It's actually a breach of the drinking water standards, which is why you have to have a filling station. So you can't just hop into any hydrant, even if it's a fire station.
Okay, any further questions for Donna, please? If not, general discussion. If not, discussion on recommendation 4, please, thanks. Or Councillor Volwell.
Yeah, look, I approve of installing this. We've got the thing sitting there, but a lot of our small communities aren't on reticulated water and get a dry year, and they depend on being able to buy tainted water. So if we can put one in another part of the district, apart from Balclutha, then hopefully that reduces the costs for other parts of the district, and there's less transport costs and such like in getting drinking water. People who need their tanks filled up. It's not a cheap option for the best of times.
So you're happy to move?
Yes, I'm happy to move. If there's no further discussion, I'm happy to move that councillor.
And seconded by Councillor Graham. So any discussion on the recommendation?
Just make the point, perhaps it would be good to look at the fees that are charged as well.
Oh, yeah, to see what money.
Not making that part of the recommendation.
Right. Councillor Catherwood.
I'll make one comment. So, truck and trade unit delivered to our workout from Balclutha. I remember right, the charge is $800 contractor. So I hope that we're getting a return out of that $800 to cover these costs. I find it quite significant, $175,000 to install the valve.
Yep, fair point. Right, got to move in a second there. Have we done with the discussion? Put the vote, all those in favour? Aye. Those against. Thank you. Number 5. A few bits and pieces here. Questions for Donna or the team first? No questions. Discussion? No discussion. Recommendation?
Through you, Worship. So Jules has just asked me to let you all know. So we've had the first cut of the engineer's estimate for this work. It has come in significantly higher than what we had budget estimated ourselves. However, when I look at the design, it's completely different to what we had requested. So I've gone back to them. We're having a workshop Monday week, and I'm also bringing in some early contractor involvement. Already had some discussions with contractors, and we believe we can do it closer to this value. I still can't guarantee until we get the confirmed final detailed design. but I'm just putting it out there that we found $2 million at this stage, subject to your approval for all these changes. And Councillor Herbert's smiling at me on that one. And we're working really hard with the designers because they had done a design recommendation which we don't agree to, which is more expensive than what we're thinking of doing. So I just want to let you know that though. And we'll bring it back to you once we tender. Yeah.
Right out. So discussions on number 5. Councillor McCrosty.
I know this sounds horrible, but it's quite a jump up on the guesstimate from the emergency meeting, isn't it? Where it was suggested that we'd probably do this for 1.3 when we...
Through you, Worship, that was just to do the wastewater pipe in its current location. This estimate is because when we looked at the asset data, so you've got the wastewater pipe running just left of the centre line on the state highway, which is not ideal. We want to get it out of that state highway traffic lane. And we've got a stormwater pipe, which is in the car parking side, like the corridor side, which isn't traffic line. That stormwater pipe is 90 years old. So it makes sense, if we can afford it, to renew that at the same time. Because what we're proposing is to dig one trench and have a new renewed stormwater pipe, which wasn't in that original $1.3 million estimate, route and cap the current wastewater pipe that's in the, for wanting of argument, the centre line of the state highway. Then we're not actually having to re-asphalt work that NZTA did 15 months ago, which isn't a great look, and then bring the wastewater pipe to the side of the stormwater pipe, but at a lower depth because of the gradients required. That's what we're proposing. The expense and the challenging part at the moment is looking at the lateral connections and also the manholes associated, because you'll have to have different manholes, one for wastewater. So that's what we're sort of nutting through now.
Sorry, just the stormwater is not only 90 years old, it's earthenware, and it's all cracked, it's all broken.
Will there be issues once we've moved all that? That's quite a big hole on the main road. Hopefully we can get all that compacted and, a few years down the track, it's not going to fly apart again like it was.
Are you talking where the current waste pipe is? So because we fill it, it's like with a concrete mix. So that stops it collapsing.
Yep.
Sorry, through your worship.
Thank you.
Councillor Catherwood.
No. That's the question I was going to be leaving the empty pipe still collapsing.
Yeah.
Fill the actual whole pipe.
Councillor Herbert.
Just out of principle, Your Worship, I don't agree with Tapanui stormwater being stopped and the Megan project stopped to fund this, so I will be voting no, just out of principle.
Further questions, comments, discussion time? I need someone to move something. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Worship. Look, I think that this has to be done. We know that. And I think that the council has done everything that we always ask of them in their research. Thank you, Donna. And I think I will be supporting this based on that. We're always asking, can you put the things in the same pipelines? Can you move it so it's not going to get affected? Where does the money come from? You've answered all those questions for us. Fantastic. I will be going with this.
Yeah, so you'll move, Councillor Payne, you second, and Councillor Graham, right? So we're going to move in a second. Any further discussion? If not, put to the vote. All those in favour? Oh yeah, we better do the show hands, so we already announced that. So, Councillor Herbert.
Just to get tied down here.
Right.
Those against.
Good call. Those again.
Those against?
Oh, yeah. Didn't quite hear you.
Thank you, we got there. Righto, number 6. Same routine. Same questions for Donna? If not, discussion. So rock and a hard place, isn't it?
No, it's an easy one. Don't need the money.
No discussion. Okay, recommendations, councillor Vawela.
I'll move that council approves the reallocation of the existing three waters budget.
Thank you. Move councillor Vawela, seconded by councillor McCroskey. Discussions, please, Dave. Councillor
Just
Hurd.
one quick question. Obviously, they all get done at one time, and we've got a few membrane plants. Would it make more sense to do it a couple a year instead of doing a whole lot in one go, or is that not the way we?
Through your worship, it really depends on how the membranes have performed.
They all wear at the same rate, yeah.
Well, but also in this, it makes sense to do them all at once for this plant.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this plant isn't the same as our wastewater plants. So one thing we could look at is moving them around. But
That was my next question.
Milton is the only one that's not a power membrane plant. So yeah, we don't have that option. Then the wastewater team might not be that keen to get the membranes that are in their life, but we can potentially trial that once our water treatment plants membranes get to the end of their life for other plants.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Grant.
So, Jules, who replaces the membranes? Do our staff do it, or do we get people in to do it?
The staff and the membrane supplier that we have a contract with will do it together. Our staff will be involved in the replacement.
So we have to, there's obviously people come in, so it's more economic to have them come and do the lot than come in 10 different times.
Definitely.
You know, we're already in close liaison with the other three councils. Have we approached them to see whether it's a pretty regular common thing, I presume, for membranes? Are they also looking for membranes and we can package up with? Is that an option, or is it just not worth it?
We haven't had a discussion at this stage, Your Worship. It's different suppliers. We're discussing whether we can have a competitive process for this membrane renewal as well. But we've just got to do a bit of work to make sure we can do that, because you can't necessarily take one supplier's membranes and put them into this plant. But potentially we can do that.
Councillor Cathaway.
Yeah, just Jules is so motor vehicles through the government buying scheme. Do we buy our three waters stuff? Is that not set up for local government?
No.
Is local government being one huge customer?
There's been questions asked recently, can we put it on steroids, but it's...
No, but
why are we getting it for other plants? We can't get it for that type of plant.
Well, the
councils.
The AOG contracts are usually piggybacked on central government contracts.
Yeah.
And central government buys vehicles and central government buys those things.
Yes.
Schools don't tend to buy pipes and things like that, and water plants. One of the things, that's one of the potential benefits of a bigger organisation is that you've got more buying power. There was talk about 15 years ago working with other councils. It just never really got traction. But depending on what happens going forward, we might have more buying power.
There has been in recent weeks, and sort of all of government movals of 3-letter, JNS, something was looking at doing it. So it's mooted, but three waters.
And just through you, Worship, the team's currently working on the engineering code of practice, which is standardised assets. So going forward, we can look at procuring for bulk areas, for example, the tank farm projects. That's exactly what we did. We purchased 95 30,000 litre tanks versus individual larger tanks. So we can start considering those strategies. My preference personally is once we've got the engineering code of practice set and approved and standardised, then that will give us better options as well.
Right, we've got a recommendation there, recommendation 6, to have a mover, please. We have a mover, please. So, right, we're done. If there's no further discussion, we'll put it to the vote. Everyone happy? So, all those in favour? Aye. Those against, thank you. Right, we'll call that smoko time. Be back at 1:15. Heading towards the business end of things, page 44. I have had a message from Councillor Finch, possibly caught on the hop. Hopefully she'll be here later on today. Who is it? Lily. Where is Lily? Welcome, Lily. Do you have anything you wish to add to your report?
Through you, Your Worship, so I'll just take the report as read, just noting that Trey is available to work out live what the rating impact on an individual ratepayer will be for any of the funding options, the difference in the impact of the loan.
Thank you, Lily. Any questions for Lily, please? I think we know what we're heading into now. Thank you. Okay, team, we'll go about it just one at a time, obviously. So, firstly, let me have a look. I do have to get that we received the report, don't we? Yep, I do. So I'll move that we received the report. Consent to second, Councillor Kennedy. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Which one was the first one? Do I go straight now to the topic of aquatic centre? Yeah, it does. Okay, then. Specifically on the topic of aquatic centre matters. Lily, do you wish to say anything on that note? So any questions to Lily first on topic aquatic centre? If not, matters open for discussion. Councillor Luden.
I'll start the ball rolling. I see this as really important for the Tuapeka Aquatic Centre, but obviously funding for us is a challenge. So I would ask the question here, would the Tuapeka Aquatic Centre consider that, say, if we were to fund it being loan funded? I think haven't they got a loan on there for that when they built the pool? I'm not sure, council staff on it. And so whether that's an option, I mean, I can see that the heating's quite an issue for them at the moment, and they probably do need to look at something. But I'm looking at other ways of funding it, basically. So throwing that out for discussion.
How do we do that? Because how do we get the answer? We're going to make the decision now.
But do we have to make the decision now? Can it be postponed to we go back to the likes of perhaps the community board and the Tuapeka Aquatic Centre discussion of whether they would be interested in looking into that? And I don't know whether, if they will, whether even that has to be consulted with the Lawrence Tuapeka community. I'm not sure.
So from my perspective, and like I was so impressed to see Ben coming here and doing the presentation, but in my pit of the gut feeling, it was sort of like, are you a year early? That, Jock, I know it's impossible, and I'm not going to put you in the situation, but it was like, yeah, I want to support you, but are you 1 year too early? Is this really the first salvo of what is, they're going to be geared up and we're going to be geared up next year? Or are we genuinely gearing up this year? Sorry to throw you on the spot, Jock. Where do we go?
Through you, Your Worship. Yeah, there's certainly not to answer your question, there's certainly not a year too early. Back in December or late November, it was brought to the attention that the school boiler was failing, and we kept Steve and Jules and those involved in management down here aware of the situation. It was a desperate grasp. We had to get a fuel tank down from Christchurch, truck down. We were very fortunate there was a portable boiler in Dunedin. To imagine the community without a swimming pool over the summer months was just unimaginable. Couldn't imagine it. So something had to be done. So it reiterated the fact then, and reiterates the fact now that we're dependent on the education board, and if there's failure, it's going to stop. The heating stops, we're back to the same scenario again, and we certainly don't want to go through that anxiety again. So, and which alludes back to, and I know everyone's not looking forward to the conversations that are in front of us, but when we go back to our policy on community funding. And, you know, and then for the elected members, you know, we've got to collectively set and deliver good value for ratepayers, is the statement in here. And that's what we have to be doing today. And yes, we're all going to have to say yes, and some are going to say no. And at the end of the day, the decision has to be met. We've got a duty of care for our ratepayers. So in this situation, having a swimming pool sitting there with no one swimming in it is not an option. I'll leave it at that.
Councillor Bolwella.
Thank you, Worship. I think we might be just a bit early, a year early on this. In the past, the pool seems to have operated very well, being heated by the school boiler. Now, we've got, it had a hiccup over the last year. The boiler was replaced, and it's now got a chip burning boiler in it. Now, I've talked to somebody from that community just in the last few days. At the time when the presentation was made by Ben, there was some uncertainty as to how the boiler would perform. Apparently, the boiler they have been doing trials, and the boiler is performing very well. So I think we would be certainly for the replacement for the heating system. If we don't need to do it, if the school boiler is capable of doing so, and there's winter to get that boiler operating efficiently, which the school will be using, and then hopefully we need it'll be available over the summer as well to keep the pool at a temperature. It's worked in the past. There should be no reason why it does again, but I don't think we need to rush into that. In the meantime, I think we need to work with the community, with the school and the Aquatic Centre Trust to make sure that we're getting value for money. And that's just referring to this, in this case, the heating system itself, not to the ventilation system. Thank you.
Right. Sorry, Michelle.
This is one that I can go both ways. Of course, a community need a pool. We've all been down the track of pools, and I remember a number of years ago saying to a councillor that don't take it off council land, but okay, it happened. My concern here is that going ahead, we are a wee bit maybe that year early, but I think going ahead, this pool needs to work on its own. This going with the school, obviously the handshake and things change over time, don't work. So going forward, I are quite happy to give some money, not all the money, and where the funding comes in. I don't know about us funding also a HVAC system as well on top. I don't know any of the other pools, maybe Milton and Alclusa might have them, but none of our other pools do. They get along quite fine. Where the funding comes from is another thing. I would probably more lean to loan funding for the community. But yes, I don't want to see them without a pool, because as we all know, there's a lot of things in our towns that we don't have, but a swimming pool is where all community go. And as you don't have the Pomahaka River running beside you, Lawrence needs something.
Councillor Graham.
Through you, Mr. Chair, may I ask Councillor, what was the actual issue with the boiler?
Through you, Your Worship, the coal-fired boiler at the school was failing. It was just outdated.
So you don't know the specifics of why it was failing? Was it the tubes or
No, the complete boiler was
Ministry had all schools change from coal to power. Wood chip.
Yeah, chip.
They had to take the coal boilers out.
So they've made repairs and it's running?
They've upgraded to a pellet boiler.
Yep.
And they've been having numerous problems with it today. contrary to what Councillor Wheeler says. So, and there's still no guarantees that it's going to be adequate fit for purpose for the school, let alone the pool.
I think the argument that it's not an option not to have a pool, I think back to the Milton pool when it failed, and it was out of action. That was an option. So I don't see, if it fails and Lawrence don't have a pool for half a year or so, yeah.
Councillor Catherwood, followed by Mackie.
Probably a question for staff is, currently the Lawrence ratepayer will be paying, they've got a UAGC, is that correct? And their portion of the UAGC, and they pay an extra loan already? Is that right, Sharon?
Lawrence paying off the pool improvements they made some years ago?
Through you, Your Worship, yes, they are, and they do that in 3 ways. That loan was funded 3 different ways.
Yeah.
One through community leadership, one through economic development, and one through the swimming pool business units.
So what does the current ratepayer in Lawrence currently pay in their rates towards swimming pools before they then have to pay to be a member of that pool or pay their day charge?
I would have to look that up for you. Sorry, they'll pay the UAGC charge the same as everybody else, and then they'll pay their 50%, but I'd have to find out.
They pay 75 for the UAGC towards swimming pools? And they've got a loan, haven't they? They pay to the community water rates?
All the costs for the swimming pools that they get that go through their swimming pool business unit, which is just a grant, I believe, and their loan, that is funded 50-50. And other loans are funded in other ways, depending where they go, like economic development's 100% UAGC, community leadership 100% UAGC.
So from the reports that we've seen around the table swimming pools, and obviously we've ended up in this situation. You've got a community pool that's got a heating issue. They don't want to lose their pool. Being involved in a pool committee down in Owaka, we did an $860,000 upgrade, and we were fortunate enough to come to this table. We got a grant of $180,000. We were very fortunate with the Target Community Trust. Massive fundraising efforts from within our community and surrounding. So I mean, they put in a huge effort. So we've spent $860 so far. We've ended up with these heat pumps. We've got a heat pump, the size of our pool. Our power bill's generally about $3,000 per month. So you think about 3 heat pumps, if they are the same kilowatt, 3 times the energy at the moment, you'd be talking $9,000 power bills. So that will then compound on top of however we fund this, it's loan funded. But at the moment, so the Lawrence community's paying about $95 per ratepayers are paying towards their local pool, towards pools for our district. Then they pay on top to then go and swim in their pool. They can join as a member, key card holder, or they can go as a casual member. Very similar to what's going down in Owaka. So we pay 75 in the UAGC swimming pools, but then we pay as family members or individual members for our pool. So I've got a suggestion of the Tuapeka Aquatic Centre are fixated on having HVAC system and heat pumps, is to crunch their numbers and look what their funding model is of getting maybe 50% of the uniform energy charge, or they're currently what they're paying. So if the current ratepayer is paying 95 per household towards swimming pools in our district, what does it look like when they get half of that money back? Let's call it $120. So if it was like, let's just say that instead of paying 95 what they're currently paying, let's just say Lawrence paid 125. If they've got 95 of that, there's 933 ratepayers here. It's $88,000 they'd have per annum. That community pool user group, which I think would go a long way to help them to pay off their loans. So to me, we've still got to get to the bottom of the issue is how do we fund our community pools? So another example I'm going to make is that I work at a community pool. So that Lawrence has had to deal with the school to heat their pool. So it's a free handshake. All the school kids get free, whereas down our way, we're totally independent on our own energy wise. So we've had to charge our school $4,000 per annum. So our education department's going, they're screaming away. And then in Balclutha and Milton, all the schools are free. So there is a big problem out there for our community pools, and I can see the struggles coming from the Tuapeka crowd, but I can't actually make a decision on this today because where is the funding source going to come from? I think it needs to be looked at further, and we need to get to the bottom of how do we fund pools.
Councillor Mackie, followed by Martin.
Yeah, this is a big issue, these swimming pools, especially the moment you want to start extending your season. Look, having run a pool, I know towards that end of the season when the heat pumps try to screw the heat out of the cold atmosphere to make a bit of heat to heat the water, to heat the pool. And then you want to put this other machine in that heats the air out of the pool so the heat pump can it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think we need, these community pools should only be open for a couple of months, 2 or 3 months during the hottest part, because your heat pumps are working at 100% efficiency then. The cheapest option for us to do here would be to pay for a bit of their diesel for running this diesel boiler.
Councillor Martin, followed by Herbert.
Through you, Your Worship, and just following on from Councillor Catherwood's, and this is probably a question for staff. So last year, the long-term plan, from the 12th to the 14th, and the Tuapeka Aquatic Centre came up back then, and it's minuted here. Elected members requested that a report be provided to council on funding for all swimming pools across the district. We haven't seen that report, and I know for a fact there was some great work being done on that report, which would have given us, before we got to this point, some guidance throughout the district with what's happening. So it's a question for staff, why haven't we seen a report?
Through Your Worship, I'm fairly sure that during the workshop, we talked about reviews that had been directed as a result of the previous annual plan or LTP. And the swimming pool report was one of those, and I'm fairly confident that that was reported that the work wasn't going to be completed in time for this year. So it was discussed, as far as I can recall, with elected members, along with a range of others, because I know Peter Stafford down the back there is very careful about all the decisions and directions that were given at previous times, and I'm confident that was one of them that we reported on.
It's gone somewhere. Was it Councillor Herbert? See, it was.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, look, just all the way into it. I think we all agree there's a little bit of work to be done, which has just been alluded to. I think we all agree that they're all worthy projects, and we support these communities. And I did ring Councillor Martin the other day because I think firstly going back to Councillor Kennedy, I'm probably a little bit with her as far as the ventilation system go. I'm not sure if that's a necessity at the moment or a nice to have or a must have, but I think in the economic times we're in, I think my focus would probably be on the heating system. And as far as that goes, we don't quite know. The school doesn't quite know how it's going to perform, and they don't know if the aquatic centre can hook into it. And I did, as I say, ring Councillor Martin the other day, because my question would be, I would have thought the school would be using the bulk of their capacity in the wintertime from that heating system, and perhaps the pool could use the bulk of that capacity in the summertime. The two are almost complementary to each other. I don't know. I would doubt whether the school has got its heaters wound up in the middle of summer, and vice versa. You're not trying to heat the pool in the middle of winter. So I would have thought you'd be able to get that working. The other thing is that, as I say, I think we all support it, but I think we've all got a bit of a nagging question in the back of our mind about the timing of it, whether it's just a little bit early or not. I don't think the community hasn't really had time to source other funds yet too to sort of get their ducks in a row there. So look, I support it, but it's probably a bit of a timing issue for me.
Further questions, Tim? Councillor Martin.
Sorry.
I appreciate Councillor Phelps.
That's through the chair. I was just going to ask Councillor Martin, the Aquatic Centre, are they able to go for other funding through community groups or not community groups, but other funding? Have they looked at that already, or how financial are they? I mean, I'm not being.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. They were actually quite financial, but they've just spent just short of $45,000 on actually diesel and hire of the boiler system to get them through this summer. Is where the situation they're at, and they're a charitable trust. They do have other avenues, but that answers your question.
Councillor McAtammany.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Can I just ask a question of Councillor Martin? So this chip boiler at the school, has it been used at any stage to try and heat the pool thus far?
Through you, Your Worship, no, it wasn't up and running during the swim season.
Yeah. So there is an unknown. Yes.
Big unknown.
Whether it can work.
And that's the issue.
So that's where I see it, that makes it too early to make this call. Because if it does work, the pool essentially has free heating costs. If that chip boiler can do it.
No, it won't have free heating costs that will have to contribute towards the chip.
Okay, because that is dearer than the coal.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's right, yeah.
Councillor Phelps.
So can I just allude on that to Councillor Martin? Do you know if the new chip boiler is connected to the pool, or has it been disconnected and changed? Like, is it able to be used now? Like, is it connected, or is it?
Through you, Your Worship, that I can't answer the question, but the piping was all there. So yeah, it can be.
I am conscious of the fact that it's sort of unfair on Councillor Martin that they're the local ward councillor, we've got to wear it. So I'll go Councillor Ludeman, then Sal.
Oh, I was going to ask for a motion forward. Is it too soon?
No, I'll come back to you, can I? Because I saw Councillor McCosty's got his hand up. Me, I'll look for some first time flyers and then I'll come back to Yali if you remind me. Dave.
Just looking at it, I can see every side. There's no way that we can sort of sit this to one side slightly till after the winter to see how that's performing. Not take this off the table completely, but just sit it to one side. I know we're in an annual plan, but we may be able to come back with a help for fuel for a boiler or whatever. Just that would give us a bit of time. Yeah.
So following on from that, Dean, that was for me. Yeah, I don't take this wrong with Staga. The old people's home that we funded, that was really great, and there was a cash flow that would do it. But a swimming pool is ours. If Ben and the team said we're not doing it, we wouldn't get back an old person's home, but we would get back a swimming pool.
The whole Clutha district's not funding their old people's home.
No, I'm just using that as an example that the swimming pool is one of our core services, and if we didn't have the system of this community group doing it, it falls back to us. It's ours. I'm looking at the debt that we were straddling with about $30,000 a year if they did both. And then there's just all these questions, and the only way I can see forward is if we got Peter and the team to bring forward the overall swimming pool, looking at right across the district, so that we go back to what councillors have been saying about consistency, and let's start doing it right. We get in direct liaison with Ben and the team so that they don't just feel that we're throwing them out the door. We know that we're running the gauntlet of the next season probably, because if we would do this, we would go to next year's annual plan before the inevitable crunch would come on. I want to support them. I don't want to see them heading out the door and thinking we're not. But there's too many questions to be answered, too many. It's just like, are we rushing into it? Could the boiler work? Is there this, there that? So the only way I can see it is that we put a handbrake on and we really push that swimming pool review of the whole district. I can't see any other way around it at the moment. Councillor Bob Wheeler, followed by Ludeman.
I'll let Councillor
No, I'm going.
Oh, yeah, if you were going to do the same, then we can go.
Oh, sorry, yeah, no, I was just going to, it's a statement.
Okay, you make a statement and then I'll go to Ali.
Look, I would be happy to fund these from investment surplus, these projects, but we don't have a lot of investment surplus at the moment this year, rather than putting this onto the loan on that district. So from that point of view, I don't think we need to come to us, but I think they're coming to us for the full amount. And in the past, they've been great fundraisers in the community. There are options there with Community Trust of Otago, which, as Councillor Catherwood has said, they were well supported here in their community. And it's the heating. I can see the value of a heat vac system here in reducing moisture in the helping preserve the facility, and also efficiency with heating and such like, and heat transfer systems. But at the moment, I think until we need to know exactly how that school boiler is going to perform before we commit to funding anything with the heat pumps and such like. So I think there's work to be done there. I think we're a wee bit too early in making a decision on this. But I'm certainly happy that the community doesn't have to pick up a whole lot of this on the line when we come to making a decision sometime.
So now where I'm heading, I'm going to go to Councillor Martin and go back to Councillor Ludeman for a recommendation.
Through you, Your Worship, I think, like everybody knows, our roles are to deliver good value for money for the ratepayers. But in the past, with council, have they, in situations like this, have they worked alongside the group for looking for solutions, be solutions-based moving forward? And if they were to know that there's reassurances that if we agree to change their arm and keep the faith that their boiler is going to work, but it doesn't, who's going to prop them up this time? Because they've burned up their reserves and shelling out all that money in diesel and boiler hire and so forth and compliance costs. They just need some reassurances, and then we could work with them for a solution, and it does involve Paul finding out more information about the district-wide pool situation. I'm sure everyone would be in a lot of a happier space. We know we've got no money, so how are we going to provide value for money when we don't have the money to provide it? So there's no value, but we do have a wealth of knowledge within the organisation, the staff and so forth, that can actually realise the extent of it, not just the Chuapeka pool, but the other district pools as well. So. But just an assurance is they're a young, hard-working committee. I mean, young and very hard-working, and just I believe if they knew that they had our support behind them, that they're not going to be hung up and dried out, would mean a lot to them.
I think that's the sentiment I'm getting, and thanks for the pragmatic response, Jock, because that's where we are. I'm sensing, and then I'll go to Ali.
Yes, Your Worship. Councillor, staff have proven time and again with community groups for large projects and other bits and pieces that we can work and do work extremely tightly and well together to deliver projects and to work through the best funding options and to investigate, the areas that is needed to be investigated before bringing a case to council. We've done that with many, many places. The issue with this one was obviously that it was an urgent matter. It happened, the crisis occurred, and then the only opportunity he had was to put this into the submission process to get it in, right? But normally, when we have more time in terms of working with the groups, we're working with them to produce a case and a funding case and all those things to answer a lot of the questions that councillors have, and we do that together and present the best case possible to council. So we absolutely do that, and staff would be doing that with the group, so that, you know, you're set up for next year, but also, you know, there is a sense of a willingness of support from council around, so what do we do, plan B around, you know, the crisis support around dollars and things like that. There's ways in which things can be done and addressed, as long as we have time to do that. So that's the guarantee we can give as staff to the group.
Councillor Ludeman.
Right.
This will be good.
I'll try a recommendation. The council defers its decision on funding the Tuapeka Aquatic Centre until the district-wide swimming pool policies report has been reviewed and council staff have worked with the Tuapeka Aquatic Centre on how to meet their heating requirements for the future.
You got that written down?
I suggest you add capital funding in there because there's other operational.
So where do you want capital funding?
Defers the capital funding.
I think it should be separate.
On?
Because there's other requests that are operational funding.
Oh, true,
So
on
that just makes it really
the
clear.
capital funding, yeah, okay, yeah.
Can I just say, Julie, you got it? No, can you have another go at it, Ellie? So Julie
She can, you got it written down.
So we'll refer to you.
Well, hang on, before you do that, can you write on there fast track?
Certainly, Shane.
Fast track work on the policy.
So I'll get Julie to read it out before we get the seconder because I got a bit lost. Oh my God, she says it.
Well, I can read it.
Why didn't you write it in English? I didn't know you're a doctor.
You got a hearing school too.
One moment, please, Steve. Okay, and the interim
Just
council.
while we're waiting, I just got a question. Like, it sounds to me we're just referencing the heat pumps at the moment and the HVAC's being left out of it. So are you inclusive of?
No, I'm inclusive of all of it.
HVAC system as well?
The whole system that we're wanting, the whole, I mean.
The two of them, Ellie.
The two of them.
Capital requests.
Yeah.
So before we go too deep, I'm looking for a seconder, but so that you know what you're seconding, Julie's going to read that. So we'll just let Julie get it.
It's not that bad.
And no, it's worse than
You
that.
actually wrote quite a lot. Right.
I'm trying to be a doctor.
So what I have, that council defers the decision on capital funding for Tuapeka Aquatic Centre until the district-wide swimming pool policies report has been reviewed and council staff have worked with the Tuapeka Aquatic Centre on how to meet their heating requirements for the future.
Something like that. Yep.
Seconder, please. Seconder, Councillor McCrosty. Matters open for discussion. Councillor McAtamany.
If I was to alter that one piece, I'm not sure why the review has to be part of that. Just from the general discussion around here, said that people, I get the feeling that we were interested in applying capital to that project, but we were unsure of how because of uncertainty over that heating system, how it might operate. The reviews, yeah.
If I can answer that, Simon, I'll be hoping that Peter next week or whatever, as soon as will be contacting the group and working alongside them so that we build up that understanding, because if it does hit the fan in November or whenever they turn the swimming pool on.
Yeah, but we're talking, what you were talking about was the general review, not just for Lawrence.
No, the reason I said this review, there's other swimming pools wanting, and I know this is capital, which is slightly different to operational, but then we've got to be careful that we have a policy around capital expenditure as well, how we might fund that, how it looks, because another pool might come for some capital expenditure. So it would be good to have it tidy through the policy review.
Yes, but I would have thought that, like, if I knew today that there's no way Lawrence is going to be able to run their pool next year with the wood chip, I would be quite open to making something a motion for something to come out of the investment surplus. And the capital thing has to be specific to each pool. Every pool, yeah. When you're giving money out of this investment surplus, every project is different.
But this isn't going, this may not come out of investment surplus, there's
Yes,
no
but-
guarantee that.
Yeah, but in the, I sort of think it's separate to the policy thing that we've been discussing is basically about some sort of funding coming from UAGCs to the various pools every year. That's been the debate, that's where Dane's debated it. That this is about capital items, and I think it's otherwise.
Councillor Catherwood.
So, but if we sort the policy, then you have the mechanism of the funding structure, you can definitely assist with those capital projects. So the biggest bugbear I've got of this whole topic is in our report before our recommendations, council's confirmed they are not changing rating mechanisms through the annual plan process. So then you've got to change how pools are funded, and this would need to wait and be considered as part of the next. Well, this was a discussion a year ago. That discussion came up because we wanted to get this before we end up at this day. Whereas I can see if we've finished that review, because Kelly guy done some great work. He came down and spoke to our committee. And once the funding mechanisms, like, you know, the paying, then that helps as capital. Like if Lawrence got 50% of their UAGC charge that they currently pay towards swimming pools, every ratepayer there, if they got half that money back, they can do whatever they like. They can go and heat their pool, they can buy heat pumps, they can do whatever they like. That's actually the reality of it. And the other 50% was used for our council control pools. The funding problem is over. You can get that policy done. You're paying up a 25-year loan or 10-year loan.
But if it's spent here, it's already getting spent, so we now allocate it there, it's not there. Peter, can I please get an indication, so to put you on the spot? Because there's two things in my mind. The Lawrence swimming pool's not going to hit the button until October, November, somewhere around there, somewhere in the summer. And also there's an election somewhere around the summer, and we're giving commitments, and it's not us that are going to have to, new council can come in. So if we activated as such this report, gave it urgency or something today, next week or whatever, when would you envisage that we will be starting to have something to come back to council with?
Your Worship, the report is underway with Kelly. Gay's been working on it and has made some progress. I'd have to defer to Kelly.
I've got his update, Peter.
Yep.
So 3 outcomes were reported back to council in around March, we think, in council or committee. Survey of pool needs specifically focusing on capital plant and equipment, that's underway. So this has been reported back. Funding system was reported back in standing committee. We referred the model work for next LTP because it was a rates review question at the time, right? Now you can do rates changes and a rate system change by a variation to the LTP in an annual plan. So you could do it, right? But you couldn't do it this year because you would have had to put it in the consultation document. And it was never done for the consultation document. So that was that issue. And then there was some clean-up funding data by ward that's underway, and we'll put it back to standing committee. So that's the update for that, right? So we're simply saying, if you have an inclination to want to move on as a body, if you agree that you want to move on community pool funding and pool funding as a rating review aspect, right? We can do workshops with you before the elections. You know, in this part of this year coming up, we can do workshops with you to get your direction on what then should be included in a variation to the LTP for the next annual plan. That's how you would have to do it to put it into play for the next annual plan. So we can do that if that's what you want. Otherwise, the idea was that this is going to be held over to the LTP, but it would be in your hands, and I would be suggesting that you would make that decision when we bring the first report back to you, and go from there. You can make those calls.
Simon.
Thank you, Your Worship, which is why I come back to my point about removing that review for the motion, because if for whatever reason we do not get that review done and Lawrence cannot run their pool, then we've tied ourselves into not being able to give them some assistance through the year or later in the year if we need.
Yeah, to me, Simon, we will be running the gauntlet of the next year. The flip side of that is if we move now, we might be reacting and spending money that wasn't needed. So that's the balance.
That's what I'm saying, but
yeah.
if the review is not done before the next season, for whatever reason, and even if we do a review, we still have to agree as a council on
To progress this, can Councillor McAtamney move an amendment, see if it teases out of the room, because we've actually got a motion on the books.
Yeah.
So you can either move an amendment or not, so just to get this moving.
Yes, I'll move that with the condition.
Can you help me with what it is?
It was conditional on that review, the piece about being conditional on having to do a review, whatever that wording.
So you're looking to remove that section of the resolution?
Then there's nothing left.
Yes, there is.
Yes, there is.
Okay, so can we get some wording around it?
Yep. That council defers the decision on capital funding for Tuapeka Aquatic Centre until council, or it's something to do with council staff have worked with the Tuapeka Aquatic Centre on how to meet their heating requirements for the future. That was the last part of that. That removed the review part.
Yes.
Which is what you wanted.
Is that where you are, Simon?
Is that what you wanted? Do you want something further?
I mean, you're not therefore saying whether we don't really know if the boiler's up to speed, but I guess that's when staff are looking at.
Yeah, well, that'll be part of the review, won't it? Waiting till it's, see what happens. Yeah.
So you're happy with that wording for me to seek a second?
No, it's pretty ugly.
It's pretty ugly, but.
In its ugly form, do I have a second? That's it, Councillor Graham. Okay, so the amendment's now up for discussion. Councillor Volwela.
Thanks, Your Worship. I support the amendment. I think they're two separate issues. We need to address the Lawrence Pool, work with the Lawrence Pool Committee there urgently. The review, I think, should not be rushed. And as the Chief Executive has mentioned, that whole funding matters really need to be dealt with, finalised in an ATP, annual plan or an LTP. And I agree that funding of pools is not equitable, so I'm not happy for that to see that progress, but not as part of this motion.
So I look at it quite the opposite, Bruce, in the fact that am I prepared to run the gauntlet for a year, knowing that at the end of that we will have consistency? Because if in the interim we jump in and we spend the money and we do it this way, and then the report comes back and no, all swimming pools should be done that way, we're just blowing the report out the water. The report will be a critical step to me, because if we're going to do it to Lawrence, we're going to do it to everyone. But if we already do it to Lawrence before we decide what we're doing to everyone, so I need that report. It's a critical component of where we're going, because we go with one and then we go with all, or we're going to do a knee-jerk reaction and then get the report and go, well, we did that wrong, didn't we?
Well, Your Worship, just thinking about it, this body, given what you're saying, could make a decision today about putting some wording about a report. But equally, the same body will receive the information about the report in the next coming couple of months, and has the same ability to make a decision as to what you do with it. So you're not losing the ability to make a decision to control and direct what happens with the report, right? You're not losing a decision in any way. The only way you would lose that is if staff didn't bring you a report, and staff are going to bring you that report. I've just given you an update around that.
But if we don't do it now, we have to do it in next year's annual plan. So regardless of when it comes
Your Worship. Sorry, what I meant is that you can't make any funding decisions that change rates this time round. You have to do it next time round. And none of that changes now. So I'm just saying to you that it's in your hands in controlling it. And honestly, if staff didn't bring a report fast enough for you, you have the ability to tell staff to get that report to us straight away, right? So the power is in your hands and you're not losing it in any way by not having a resolution on that report at this point.
Further discussion before we put the council amendment.
I'd probably stick to the fact that I would like to see the policy. It basically goes back to what I said at the beginning of the meeting today, that we need consistency and, you know, yeah, that's my whole reasoning for it. I don't see it as detriment to the Tuapeka Aquatic Centre. It probably might be actually to their benefit once we actually have time to review everything. So I certainly don't, it's not asking that as a detriment to the request. I totally support it, but yeah, so I prefer it to be left in.
Okay, look, sorry, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Worship. And I'd just like to reiterate that they're a young, committed committee, as long as that they know that they have our support. I'm sure, and then working with council staff, we could work out a solution. But they need that assurance. They're our community's emerging leaders, these young ones. We've got to support them.
Oh, I see Ben as the only hope. Sorry about that. Righto. Where are we going? Done? Yep, we're finished with that, so we put it to the vote and we're going to have to hold them up for Julie, please. This is the amendment, and so Julie will read the amendment out.
That council defers the decision on capital funding for Tuapeka Aquatic Centre and directs council staff to work with the Tuapeka Aquatic Centre on how to meet their heating requirements for the future.
Happy with that? So please keep your hands up until Julie tells you otherwise. All those in favour, please raise your hands and say aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, Your Worship.
Although, did you get it? Hold on, you might have popped them down early.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Still 7.
You get them?
Yeah.
Okay, and then those against, please raise your hands and say no.
7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Your Worship.
Amendments carried. It now becomes the substantive motion.
Should be 7.
No, Gainer's not here.
There's 14 of us.
1, 2, 3. Yeah.
7. It's someone else saying.
And Kevin.
Yes. Oh, the empty seat.
The invisible. We got it, yeah. So we're down to, what are we today? We're 13. Yeah, 6 and 7. So regardless of that, it now becomes the substantive motion and is open for discussion. Righto, we've exhausted the discussion. I'll go pretty quickly through. You'd close it, would you, Sean? Let me have a think you would. I'll just give it one more. I'll come back to you, Simon, but I'll give it one more rattle. Has anyone got anything to say before Simon sends this to the vote? You send this to the vote, there you go.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons why I wanted the amendment was I'm all for the review, very important, but I think we're sort of mixing up what we're talking about there is how we distribute annual funding to these pools. Whereas this item come to us as a capital request, and they're quite different. And that's why I wanted to leave the option open for the aquatic centre.
Yeah. Righto. So we know what we've done. We've had a good discussion on it. Remember, please, we dropped our hands a bit too early there. Julie did not give you the authority to drop your hands. So this time, all those in favour, please raise your hands and say aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 7. Is that a hand up, Councillor McCroskey? 10, 11, Your Worship.
Stretching those in your ear.
You're happy? And then those against, please raise your hands to say Julie will confirm. Okay. That's that one done. And a blinding flash, we'll move on to the next one, which is
we didn't spend any money.
As Lawrence Chinese Camp Charitable Trust. Lily, do you have anything you wish to add? No? Okay, guys, we'll just pull it in if we can. We're going Lawrence Chinese Camp. This is another important one. Matters open for discussion. Hold on, before we go to discussion, has anyone got questions for Lily or the staff? No, they haven't, so matters open for discussion. Sorry, John. Yes.
Yeah, look, I'm not sure if I support the full amount of 200,000, but I certainly support it, and Lawrence has in the past put itself on the map. It's a historic town in Otago with the Gabriel's Gully and the goldfields and what have you, and this is right by the motorway, the highway there, so it's in a really good prime location to be there. And I think people travelling on that Central Otago Dunedin Road, I think it would be a real asset to us in the future. So certainly support it, but I'm not sure if I support it up to 200,000.
Can I say for the 15 years I've been mayor, because I didn't really know much about the Chinese camp before I became mayor, and every year I go up there, and every year they chip away, and they've been working towards this day for longer than 15 years. It is going to, like, when you know the project and you know the hopes and dreams and you know everything they've done to date, they put a lot of money into it. It will be a bitter pill after all this time and all these couple of decades of preparation that they get to our doorstep and we're sitting there valve bouncing because of the situation we're in. I'm nervous too, but if there was one that I was, one that, okay, they've done all their fundraising, they've done all the background work, they've done everything. And today they've come to us. So, and they're the type of group, if they got the momentum in behind them, something really special would happen up in Lawrence. And we as a district and a nation will be rewarded over and over again. Just the stinking timing. Anyone else? Councillor Graham.
Through you, I think, as you said, they've been at this for over 15 years. I think we defer it another year won't have that big an impact. I wouldn't be supporting it.
You stand for it off.
Councillor Fawela.
This is one I'd like to support, actually. It's been sitting there in the background. We've known they've been doing work on this for a long time here. So to move it along, I'll move a motion that council approves funding of $100,000 to the trust 25-26 for stage 2 development as a grant funded investment surplus. Just to test the meeting.
Okay, I've got a mover, I need a seconder. Okay, Councillor Herb, second, the matters open for discussion. Councillor Ludeman.
I kind of support what they're doing, but I can't support to that amount this year. I just think I'd consider a lesser amount, but we just don't have the funds for it, and hard and all as it is, I support their project. I would only support it at a lesser amount.
Councillor Catholic.
Through your worship. Well, the economic times are the economic times, and unfortunately the investment cycle is not playing in our favour this year. And even though we haven't put a cap on the money, when you ain't got the money, you ain't got the money. Timing couldn't be worse for this amazing project. I'm very impressed with your project. 100% support them in their vision. We just don't have the money. In 100 grand, we don't have 100 grand. Therefore, I will not be supporting the motion.
I look at it a different way, I suppose, and the fact that it's tight, but there is money there to be distributed, and it's up to us to decide and prioritise. I was still like, it's not 200,000 like I was hoping, so there's already quite a quantum leap backwards for me to go to 100,000, but That would be the very least that I could see that we, after 100, what are we going to do? Give them 5,000, wish them all their best on their multi-million dreams of generations. So I'd certainly be supporting the 100,000. The only problem we have is I'd hope that it was 200,000. But the pragmatic side of me says that in this environment, all right, that's what we're going to do. Councillor Volwela.
Close the debate.
Oh, how come?
Moved it.
Can you just give me a hesitation because I didn't quite, knowing that Bruce is hovering to close, is anyone, any fresh time flyer coming on through? Right, oh, sorry, Councillor Martin.
Through your worship, like Joe's councillor Wheel is very trigger happy today. Yes, well, once again, we've got a whole raft of worthy applicants here too. And we don't have the money, and we've got to deliver good value for our ratepayers. That's it. Money.
What's the question?
Councillor Kennedy, neighbour.
The Lawrence Chinese camp going forward is a fantastic new idea. I mean, this is where we also get around the table, and I know it's probably sitting in the back of minds, is all the museums that are sitting around that are struggling, that are not moving forward, that are stagnant, that are... This is a modern, it's basically a modern heritage museum, which everyone can take part on, and it's like, I think Councillor Herbert might have said, it's right on the main road. This group have spent years on it, and it's years and years down the track before everything's gonna go ahead. I still would like to see some money go towards them. And as Councillor Martin said, there is a big pile sitting here, and you sort of go, oh, who is and who's not? This is something that I see in the future that won't just, like our other museums, sit in the background and not people go to and not get the foot traffic. You've got also the cycleway that runs right beside it as well. All the camper vans, there's plenty of room to pull up, pull in. I will support it, but probably not to the 100,000. I think a lesser amount to keep them interest going and keep them on the ball track, maybe looking at 50,000.
You make an amendment. You left me in no man's land.
Left you in no man's land. Well, I'll make an amendment that we support them with 50,000, not 100.
And I'm going to think whether that's
a different thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll roll with it. So we've got the amendment. You seconded, Ellie. Seconded by Councillor Ludeman. Amendments open for discussion. No discussion. We know what we're doing. We're cutting on in at 50 for the amendment. Julie, you ready to go? Julie's ready to go. So all those in favour, please raise your hands and say aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Your Worship.
All those. Too quick?
Got Martin Ludeman Payne.
Someone read here.
No.
And this time it's home high, so Julie definitely gets it. And those against, please raise your hand and say no. No. So please keep your hands up just so that Julie can.
Yeah, no, that's right. I've just.
You've done.
Yeah.
So that means the amendment's lost. We now go back to the original motion. Is there any further? I was going to go to Councillor Volwela, but seeing there's been a bit of a wrap, I'll do one last look around before he closes the. Okay, Councillor McTamaney.
Very quickly, can I just ask again what the amount was, 100 or 200?
100.
And can I ask the question? And it will be funded from investment surplus. There's no other funding avenue.
That's the resolution.
Yeah.
Righto, Bruce, did you?
I think it's pretty much been said. I'd like to support it for a higher amount, and I appreciate the fiscal constraints low, and hopefully next year will be a better year for our investments, and we'll be able to satisfy a lot more needs, not just this one if they come back.
So that closes the discussion. We're now going to go to the vote, and I once again ask, we're pretty snappy at dropping them down that time. It's me that gets punched when Julie gets angry, so let's keep it moving. So, all those in favour, please raise your hands and say aye. Aye. Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, Your Worship.
Right. All those against, please raise your hands and say no. So no abstaining. So where does that leave us? There's other recommendations there. Someone's got to do something.
You've done a resolution to put all that on, did an amendment to put a lesser amount of funding.
But we haven't done that one. So I need a recommendation. There is a recommendation at the bottom that we do not approve, which Councillor Graham, is that what you know? Councillor Graham, Councillor McCosty seconded. Matters open for discussion.
Yeah, I think what's happened is a bit of a timing thing here. I think people actually support it and we're worrying about the number. And so I think we've landed, we've bottomed it. Yeah, I think we need to have another crack at a number to be fair.
Okay, so we can do an amendment.
Yeah, I agree, Your Worship. Look, I want to support this, but I don't want to support it to 100,000. So I think Councillor Herbert just suggested we need to. But you've already got a motion on the table, so we've got to test it, I guess.
No, you can have an amendment.
Okay, well, can I amend it to maybe $60,000? Just to be.
We did the 15, we'll go with the 60.
Yeah. No, I don't know, I'm looking for a solution, is what we're looking for.
Okay, so you're more entitled.
We're happy with 50 and probably.
Okay, so Councillor Payne has done.
If you like to 75, there you go.
Okay, so Councillor Payne has done an amendment for 75,000. Do I have a second, please? Councillor Herbert, matters open for discussion. I'll say that, like I was mortified to think that we would not support this group. And at the start of today, when I tried to labour on the fact that we do have funding. We don't have funding to say yes to everything. Most definitely we don't. And it's a priority. In my alignment of priorities, the Chinese camp comes in. To say that, there has been a couple of statements of, hey, this year we've got no funding. We have got funding. There's the funding that's there, but we have to say no to some and yes to others. And I'm most definitely saying the Chinese camp is a yes. 75,000, it'll be interesting to see how it goes with the 100 and then the 50 or the other way. But this is a long time in the coming, and if we were to turn their backs on them, what that signals as us as the district, one of the most unique and really special projects that we could all be so proud of. I'm surprised. Right, hands up. Did you, hold on, no, you didn't, no, you can do it, yeah.
I think because it hadn't gone their way, it's turned this into a kangaroo court. I won't be supporting it.
Can I just respond to that? The reason I said that was because I think if we'd put up the 50,000 first, I didn't vote for the 50,000 because I was quite sure the 100 was going to go through.
Yeah.
So if it had been it's not a kangaroo court. This is democracy working. If the 50 had been put up, 100 had been put up first, I think it would have gone through.
And I abstained.
So it's the same reason. It's not a kangaroo court. It's just a timing.
Yep.
Which one was put up first?
Councillor Catholic.
Oh, should we go back to where we're at? There's no money, pockets are empty, they're empty. Say there's funding, yes, there's funding. Very little funding. Very little funding. Of course this table supports this project
This is the wrong year. It's the wrong
So
year.
can I get a clarification on that, Dane? Is that therefore that you'll say no to everything today?
No,
So there's priority.
no, they need 200,000. I can see it. They need they're coming here for 200 grand. They're not coming here for 50 grand. They're not coming here for 70 grand. They want 200 grand. That's their vision. That's their project. This is the wrong year. Bring that vision.
Councillor Werdeman.
I'd have liked to have seen the 50,000 and that would have been my priority, but I will support it at 75 simply because we can't say no to everything. This is an important project for our district. We actually have to think of our district as a whole and that, I mean, look what this will do for tourism across our district as well. So I'd have liked to have supported it also to the full amount. But actually, we have got to stop and think about, we can't say no to everything. If we say no to everything, we're not going to support the growth of the district, basically. And maybe it's just for 1 year, but actually, tourism is growing within the district, so let's continue that growth. So I support it to see.
Councillor Payne, if I went to you, we'll close it. So I'll go to Councillor McTellany.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'm just noting Councillor Catherwood's comments about how the group are looking for 200,000, and suddenly it just worries me that if they don't get that 200,000, does that mean that what they're looking to do goes totally into limbo? We put 75,000 into the account, and they can't do anything with it. It's 200,000 critical to moving on this year. I don't know.
Project. Good question. You're multi-million.
Councillor Martin.
Through Your Worship, I'd just like to comment. You made the statement that to turn our backs on them, but I don't see us turning our backs on them at all. One councillor is turning their back on them. Everybody is fully supportive of their project, but I just felt that saying the words turning our backs on them is possibly not appropriate.
In my heart, when the vote of nothing came through, that was turning their backs.
No, everyone's entitled to their opinion.
Yep. And I'll hold. Councillor Payne now.
So just to close, I'd just say that it would worry me that by giving them no money actually prohibits their way forward. How can they go to funders and ask for funding if they've got nothing to back that up with? And so that would definitely be putting the brakes on, I feel, for them. So we need to be supporting in some way, but we're just discussing there now. So those are.
Thank you. So that brings the discussion to a close. Once again, we know what we're doing. You ready? Okay then. So please could all those that support the motion raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Your Worship.
Oh, did you get it?
2, 3.
And all those that are against, please say no and raise your hand.
No.
Thank you for that. But that one.
That becomes a substantive motion now.
There's two. So the substantive motion now is the 75,000 matter open for discussion. Exhausted the discussion. Righto. So once again, we know what we're doing. This is the full recommendation. You ready?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. All those in support, please raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
All those against, please raise your hands and say no.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Same here. So that brings it done. Thank you for that, team. Next one, Clutha Development. Lily, anything?
Taking it through.
Any questions for Lil? It is open for discussion.
Actually, there's a question, just how did we fund this amount within 195 last year?
Through you, your worship, it was funded from investment funds.
Thank you. Yes, you recall, I tried to get it into the budgets from a rates perspective, and that failed. So that it had to come through as a submission last time. You had some money, so you said yes last time, but it's had to come through again as a submission on an annual basis.
Okay, I'll be straight up. I've got to be transparent. In good times, this was a marginal thing to do. It's a nice to have project, but right here, right now, when we're having the discussions that we've just had on the compromises that we came to the Chinese camp, I have no qualms in this day and age under these environmental economic circumstances. I can't support that 150,000. Councillor Lehman.
I kind of go a different angle. I mean, Clutha Development have come back, they've reduced the amount that they've asked for. They, I guess, acknowledged the financial situation the council's in. I would like to see them supported to some extent. They've actually really gained momentum in the way that their destination management plan has gone across, and I just see we're actually getting a return on the investment that we've put in previous years. I think it's been, so I would be disappointed to see us not continue to fund at least part of this funding for destination management.
Councillor Graham.
Look, I hear in that last discussion how the cycle trail and the tourist attractions and blah, 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 blah. These are guys that push it. Give credit to them. They've dropped the amount that they're requesting. I'll be fully supporting these guys. I see what they do for the community. I see what they do down in Kai as far as the housing goes. Yeah, I know tourism numbers are difficult to quantify the benefits, but to me, these guys are 100%.
Councillor Catholic.
Excellent question. How much do we support club development annually in rates? What's the figure that the annual grant that we?
No.
750,000.
Sharon?
I was going to check for sure, but we paid in, I think it's 480,000 for something and then 60,000 for business, sorry, and do this.
And how much do we pay for our eyesight per annum, the rate payer?
To rent that,
Pardon?
what do you mean?
To our eyesight, our information eyesight, how much do we pay that? How much does the rate payer pay for that service per annum?
Worship eyesight's not relevant to this.
Destination management.
Include the development incorporated.
340,000, 342.
Further questions, Taylor? Councillor Martin.
Through you, Your Worship, very similar to the last item on the agenda, like the Chinese camp will need these people moving forward. So if we're going to support one, we've got to view this very strongly as supporting this as well, because one without the other, what do you got?
Councillor Harriman.
I just had that written down. I kind of, there was an article in the paper a few months ago now that our visitor nights are up and our visitor spend was up. So things are actually working. And we've just invested or put aside $75,000 for a tourism attraction at Lawrence. Absolutely, we've got to support this, but I would be interested in a discussion around how it's funded. I think this is more of an operational thing as opposed to a one-off grant for a community group. I would probably like to have that discussion too. I'll throw it out there. I think there's a.
Yeah, well, Your Worship, the resolution doesn't say necessarily, how it's to be funded, because you can fund it in different ways, right? As you said, so there is different ways in which you can push it.
So if it went on the rates, it would be 0.4% or something. Is that what you said? That's the only
Correct, Your
interruption,
Worship.
isn't it? Councillor McAtee.
Yep, thank you. Yes, so I was going to carry on from Councillor Herbert there, because I know that in the last 2 years when this has come up, there's been discussion on how it's been funded. Both times we've gone back to the investment surplus, and that is not a suitable place for a long-term operating grant. If you're going to fund this again, you're essentially saying this is a long-term operating cost for the council, and therefore it has to be rate funded if you're going to approve it. You cannot just keep taking it from investment surplus for the next decade.
Councillor Lehman.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Megatamley's comment, and I'd like to, I'd quite happily move that we fund it to 150,000 and funded from, but I would need direction from staff as to how we fund it, but funding.
Just be district-wide.
District-wide, yeah. The OGC, yeah. So that's how I'd like to put the motion.
So I've got a mover and I've got a seconder and Councillor Graham. Questions for Sharon. What is 150,000? What is the increase? 0.4, 0.3?
15.47.
Sorry?
We take it to 15.47.
Any further comment? I will say if we went Chinese camp and we've also gone with the swimming pool, Chinese camp came to 200,000, we found the level at 75. I'm sure just destination management could work on, if it was the same, I wouldn't go half, even though it was less than half that we gave the Chinese camp, but something like 100 to pull it into line. We're looking at every penny for the ratepayer. Are we saying it or are we actually doing it? So I'd like to make an amendment that we have $100,000 for destination marketing out of general rate. Need a seconder, please. Councillor McCrosty. Amendment's open for discussion. I'm doing it because we've got to find a balance. We've had that real friction between don't spend anything and hey, please, I need it. It's okay, we're still listening to our groups, but we know that we haven't got the 1.2 million. We've got way less than that. So consequently, there has to be an apportionment. You know, in my heart where the apportionment is. I'm trying to be pragmatic and reflect where we are as a district. Are we ready for the vote on the amendment? Have I got hands flicking up anywhere? Hello? You right?
Mm-hmm.
All those in favour, please raise your hands and say aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Your Worship.
All those against, please raise your hand and say no.
1, keep them up, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Your Worship.
Amendment's lost. We're back to the original. Discussion, anyone?
I can close.
Are you closing?
I'll be closing if I
I could, just before you do, can I have a go? Does anyone else want to have a say? Councillor Payne.
I mean, for me, it's about now you wish that they were here so they could give you some answers, because I don't know what $100,000 looks like in their operational budget compared to 150 and what can be delivered. So it's very difficult to, and we already know, I'm defending this now, we already know that they've looked at their budget and taken 45 off. So yeah, I'm sure if they thought they could do it for 100, they would have come at us with 100 as well. Yeah.
Ready for the vote? Oh, hold on. Ready for you?
I can probably answer that a little bit, in that I guess I know that they've really looked hard, and because that's already on their committees, I can say that they looked hard at their budget, and it was quite a decision to come back to this, but they did realise the situation that council was currently in. My closing comment was going to be, I think this being funded from the UAGC is the most appropriate place for it, and I think that's a positive step as well. So, yeah, that's my closing.
Okay, Jill? Yep. All those in favour, please raise your hands, say aye.
Aye. Yeah. 6, 7, 8, your worship.
Those against, please raise your hands, say no. Motion's carried. Sid is out. So we're going to diplomas application. Lily, anything to add?
Taken as read.
Thank you. Questions for Lily? It is open for discussion. Someone's going to start. Oh, there we go.
Okay, so
it's like a game of poker or something.
This team presented very well, I thought, and actually they're proving their way. First year, 47,000 people through the door, 300k. This next financial budget's looking better, and next year they look like they're going to be breaking just about even, just about at the zero. So my big question to myself is, what if we don't do this? Well, they actually need this support to keep them afloat until we get the last tenants. And last week it's done a huge effort for them, and so I will be supporting this. And my biggest question to myself is, why are we coming to an annual budget with this where it should have been longer than just an annual budget? I think we have a right. I think we have a duty to, when to divest in halls and that we do support them in some way. And this one has certainly proved itself as a need, not a want. It's been a need with people going through the doors.
So the hands flicked up, so I think it's Herbert, McAtammany, Ludeman, Graham, but no, you didn't. It's McAtammany, Ludeman, Graham.
Your worship, just for clarification, there was a question there. The question can be answered very simply in terms of why was it asked for here. And if you'll recall, historically, they didn't ask for anything because they believed that they could manage it. At the time, we had said that we do fund, for example, with the sports centre, the rec centre, to an operational tube, but it wasn't what was asked for. And so this time around again, they're asking for this, and you're saying, hey, they might be all right next year or next year after. So there's some there's uncertainty around the level of support, if anything, that council is being asked for. So I think the answer is that's why it was an annual request at this point, because there's uncertainty around what might be in the future.
And that's dead right.
Councillor McAtammany.
Thank you. Yeah, my question, or Lily was hiding around behind it, it's got noted in there about the most appropriate way to fund this, the district-wide rate or the community facility rate. I'm assuming that could be a combination of two, or
Through you, Your Worship, currently it's in there sitting in the Balclutha Halls budget, because that's where it came through as a decision last time. It was already included in Balclutha Halls, and the question was raised, should they get that money or do we take it out? And we left it there, but it could be funded as a grant, like other things are funded as a grant, which would be 100% UAGC. So because it's in community halls, it will be 50-50.
So when you said Balclutha Halls, you were talking about Lower Clutha?
Correct.
Which is a pretty broad area, as I've commented before. Yeah, paying a substantial amount.
Can I just check, Sharon, following on from that question, consistency, where do we, maybe it is the only one, is there any other one that we're funding that's coming from somewhere so we know what the consistency is? Rec centre, but that's going to fall.
We have all our little community halls, and they go through the community facilities rate, but not on this, not on this scale either.
Yeah, and through Your Worship, things like Milton grants to the Coronation Hall and West Otago Community Centre, they're funded the same way.
So there's consistency, that's fine, thank you.
The Milton pool though, we agreed last year to go 50-50.
Sorry, swimming pools, parks and reserves, they're all on the 50 facilities rate, and it's 50% within the community of interest and 50% on the UADC.
Councillor Lumen.
Yeah, I mean, I support this, because I think we owe it to them. We support other community facilities across the district. And so it really is just where it's funded from that would be my question. And yeah, so that's, because I don't see it as an investment surplus funding. I see it coming. These community facilities.
Councillor Harriman.
Yeah, I feel the same, and it's hopefully a dwindling operational expense, and I would only support it if it was a local fund, not a district-wide.
Councillor Volwella.
Sorry, just for clarification, are you talking about, when you say local, it's the current funding?
Talking about page 45 when it explained the funding avenues we have, and it talked, which was actually a very good report. That was a very good explanation, and reminder for us. But the local funding, local community funding, which is 50-50, not district-wide, which is 100% UADC.
Yes, as opposed to the community project rate, which is 100% community interest. That's right. You're talking 50-50.
Yes.
Someone had their hand up. Councillor Volwella.
I support this too. In the past, we had the Belclutha Memorial Hall, that was council-owned facility. We paid for that, the maintenance depreciation, I forget how much, and such like, I forget how much that was annually. So I think it's only fair that we support this. We're paying no more than we would have been doing in the past to support the old memorial, much better facility now. And if you want a motion, I'm happy to move.
Is anyone going to scream it? Can I go to Councillor Mackey and come back to you, please?
Certainly.
I won't be supporting the 80,000 just being paid to them. I would support it actually being going as a contribution to concreting the car park in their facility.
No one before Bruce comes up with the salvo. Oh, now the hands are coming up.
So I just want to sort of clarify a little bit and say, this going to just keep coming? Like, is this going to be year in, year out? Are we lining up now to say, this is what we're doing and it's going to be a 50-50 forever? Like we had the big, we've spent 10 million bucks, the ratepayers to create the facility, great facility, no issues there. We're short of a tenant. It's almost breaking even. It's got 300 grand in the bank. Are we just really we just decided today to start creating 80 grand a year? Every year, 50-50, when it's been sold that it'll be independent, won't need any help. It's almost there, it's got 300k in the bank, like, is that where we're at? Is that what we're deciding today?
No.
Forever?
The resolution is 25-26.
Yeah, but is it forever?
And the comfort I take is we know that there's that dirty great big space right at the front of the building, and I look at that and think, probably about that amount.
Yeah, it should get over the line. Yeah.
So there was a flash of hands went up there. Who was the mover? And I saw you, King, so King, I thought you were. So I can go Councillor Payne.
Yeah, so thanks, Your Worship. So clearly, this is still in a state of building their business and they need this money just to carry them through. They have said all along that they want to be fully sustainable. And I do emphasise that they're working on heaps of things in the pipeline at the moment that will help that. They just can't get there at the moment. They need that to keep going. And I'm really hoping we do support them. I mean, there was something else I wanted to say, but it's just gone for. I should have written it down. Yeah.
Right, I'm going back. Was it you, Bruce, that said, someone said they had a recommendation?
Yeah.
It was you, yes. I'll go back to you, let's test whether me.
Just happy to move that council approves the funding of $80,000 as for 2005-26 as It's an operational grant funded from the community facilities rate.
Second, please. Councillor Payne. Matters open for discussion. No discussion, and we're going to go straight to the vote, then. We exhausted it. We have, ready, Julie? Oh, hold on, Councillor Martin.
Through you, worship, just to clarify, you're talking the community of interest in the 50-50. Yeah.
So we're heading to the vote. Everyone comfortable? Julie? Yep. Done. All those in favour, please raise your hands and say aye. All those against, please raise your hands and say no. Thank you, motion's carried, so that will. Next one, South Otago Historic Society. Lily, do you have anything you wish to add? No? Questions for Lily, please? No questions? Oh, sorry, questions?
So the original, the 35, just remind me please, the 35 that we have been funding for the curators being funded from?
Investment service.
Investment service. Says it was district rate.
Yeah, district rate.
Yeah.
So you had, it's a district-wide grant.
The district, so it has been district-wide just on the UADC to date.
That's how we fund all of it.
So that will be included in the budget now for the growth rate.
Would have had to be physically removed, Sharon?
No, through you, your worship, it was included as a submission last year for 1 year only.
So you've physically taken it out this time round? Okay.
It's out.
Question to Sharon, if I can, please. Sharon, we give money to the combined museums of 86,000, somewhere around there. We last year gave 35 here. Do we give something down in the Catlins? I'm just trying to get what the figure is that we're doing and what proportion it is.
We gave some to Lawrence last year as well.
Can you think of the amount? Sorry.
19,000.
19, yeah, right. So we have given others right out.
They got 38,000 for a manager.
Thank
And
you.
we gave some money to them for the info services as well. 9,200 for 3 years.
Where is that at?
Actually, we only gave them 19,000 for managers, sorry.
And can I get a clarification? If we funded this, it's funded on the UAGC over the whole district museum? And that will, yeah, right, I know what that is. Further questions, plain Councillor McTammany.
Am I right in that we actually had the same discussion last year?
Mm.
And we were talking about a full review, but a museums review. So if we are to carry on, I'm looking at those recommendations. I know we did not approve the second one last year. First one, should that wording, if we're going to do it, should we be thinking a bit longer term? Otherwise, we just, especially when these things come back and lift the rates again. If we are to do it.
Just in terms of the review, my understanding is that we should expect the review coming through this over this calendar year, because it was one of the reviews that we talked about, I think. Peter, is that right? We are expecting it.
If I can speak to that through you, Your Worship. So I and Tiffany Jenks, who's the Heritage Coordinator, are currently working on the review as we speak. It's been in the work in progress.
Thank you. Councillor Levy.
I guess we need to support the Historical Society, but it is a real concern, their financial situation. And I don't know if it's the right way to be supporting this group. I honestly don't know. I know I am concerned really just at the financial situation of the actual museum and which would be the best way for council to be supporting them overall. And I think this is where this perhaps whole museum review becomes important. yes, it's funded from UAGC, but, you know, we've got to be careful in that respect as well, because how much funding do other museums get towards their curator salaries? You know, and because I think the Awaka one funds their own. So, to be fair, this is one that needs to be worked through, in my mind, through the museum review.
Councillor Graham and Councillor McCrosty.
Through you, I don't know about the rest of you, but I've been to that museum down there a few times, and the difference I've seen over the last 10 years, it's an amazing facility. I don't know if any has been in there. Look, people talked earlier on about heritage and the Chinese thing and all that sort of stuff. We've got some in our own backyard, and their only handicap, well, one of their biggest handicaps is probably their geographical position. You know, I don't know too many people from the South Targa going there, and yeah, look, you really got to go in there to believe it. It's I'd be saddened if we didn't give them the funding to improve. I think they have 2 people through a day on average, you know. So if all of us just go through once a week or every council day, it would probably increase their turnover immensely. So I'll be fully supporting this, and I'm prepared to move it.
Can I come back? We've still got hands coming up. Can you remind me to come back here? So I've got Councillor McCrosty, myself, and then I think Councillor Catlin.
Well, I understand 100% what Councillor Graham's saying, but he also probably took my thunder in saying that when they were up here, 2.3 people, they haven't really expanded on that. And yeah, we've got amazing history, but for 2.3 people, it's a lot of money.
So for me, we have to look at what we're doing here. This isn't the facility. This is for a curator and an assistant. And following on from Councillor Ludeman, we're muddying the water in the fact that when we tried to get consistency some years ago, we went to the combined museums and we worked out how much we needed for the rates and insurance to keep going. And we topped it up by a wee bit, and we threw it back to them with, if you want a curator, if you want this or that around the district, we'll give you 85,000, so it covers your bases and you got your bit and you decide. So there was that one port of call, and now we're getting some coming from the outside, and that's why if it's going to be that the 85 goes up to 110, and we still put it back to them, because at the moment South Otago has a magnificent thing, and they get a curator. Tankata doesn't. Lawrence, don't know, probably doesn't. Milton, what have you. If that combined group decided that they want one curator to do the lot or to do one or whatever, that was the structure that we set up. We didn't set it up so that, then come back and dive bomb us individually, please. And that's why I've always been hesitant to support it, because we're breaking the structure to get the consistency we strive for. Councillor Catherwood, followed by Graham.
Oh, yes, through you, Your Worship. I hope you gave them a $5 bill, Councillor Graham, instead of a $2 coin. All your visits. But anyway, this is the 3rd year now that they've come along the handout, and we have that structure of the combined museums. And Owaka does support its own curator. Not everyone that travels, you go to every museum when you go travelling to a new part of the world. You don't want to go to every single museum. We support the Otago Museum to the sum of 120 grand, I think, is it? I think it's 200 something thousand. We're giving the combined museums 85,000. This is the 3rd year, it keeps coming back, and once again, I will not be supporting it. We'll improve the funding of it. And what will come out of it is they will come up with a solution, and the exhibits won't be ruined and trashed.
and the community will come together and make it all happen. Like the recent development in the Waka's museum was their storage facility. It costed 900,000. Didn't come here. Came from within that community. That community sorted that out. The same thing will happen there. It won't be lost. You won't lose your heritage. It will be fine. So I won't be supporting this today.
Did you want to say something? Sorry, love.
Through you, Your Worship, just quickly, I just wanted to comment on the amount that the combined museums currently get is 58,000, like 600 and something, not 85, just to
58,000.
consider. But also the way that structure works currently, we give them that funding for their insurance and rates and whatnot. But whatever money they have left over, it's something like 2,000, 3,000 is supposed to go towards projects. It's not supposed to go towards curator. Hence why they've been coming individually for these curator salaries. And part of the review is looking at how we can tie it all in together to include curator and how we can fund them across the board.
The sad thing for being here so long, Lil, is I know what the aspiration was when we first set out to do it. And it's got watered down and muddied along the way. Councillor Gray.
Yeah, further to what you were saying before, Mr Mayor, that you say that this goes to a curator for the Balclutha Museum. That curator actually does spend time at the other museums. She spends time at the Kai Museum. I think she spent 2 weeks at the Kai Museum last year. And I dare say they go around the other museums as well. So it's not purely and solely the Balclutha Museum.
Where were we? Someone said they wanted to do a motion. You want to do a motion?
I'm prepared to move it and fund it from, where was it funded from last time?
District.
Sorry?
District of the UAGC.
Yeah.
So we know what we're doing? Funded UAGC. Seconder?
Recommendations.
Sorry. Sorry, Bruce, are you just doing it for the first one?
I should go for the 2 and then you can knock me back to the first one.
Do one at a time.
Well, it's your call. It's just one at a time. So we're just doing the top one, Julie. Brucey is second, you are second, Councillor Bob Wheeler. Open for discussion, just the first one. Councillor Bob Wheeler.
Yeah, look, I think it's a worthy funding the museum of the curator. Dr. McKechnie she's skilled, she's a knowledgeable person in this area. They're working hard, a small group are working hard to try and get new museum, new facilities, and I think without somebody there to support a committee like that, it will be much more difficult. Also, I don't think we should, well, the numbers going through museum are of relevance. I don't think we should concentrate on that either. Looking after some valuable materials, which if we don't have, if they're not cared for properly, they'll be lost to the district. They'll be lost forever. So in the meantime, I'm happy to support this.
Movers, seconder, discussioners. Going to go to the vote. Councillor Martin.
Through you, Your Worship, very similar situation to the swimming pools, the museums and information centres, and I believe we should be strongly fast tracking the review through on that before we make any hasty decisions. Work alongside them.
Yep. Any more before we go? Really? Okay, all those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. All those against, please raise your hand and say no.
No.
Motion's lost. Go back out to the field. Councillor Catherwood.
Council does not approve funding 35,000. Council does not approve funding for the 15/6.
So you're going for 2 doctors, right out. Need a second. For Councillor McCluskey in the nick of time. So Councillor Catherwood's moved nay to both, seconded by Councillor McCluskey. Matters open for discussion. So no?
Oh, no, I'm just concerned that now we've combined the two. I would vote no to one and yes to the other. We moved one separately before.
Well,
now
moved
we-
both.
That's the movers.
Yeah, that's how this.
It could make a difference, that's all.
Yeah, what?
No, I'm moving both.
Moving both. Yep, that's your choice.
Yeah.
Moving
Moving both.
second there. Further discussions? Councillor Lumen.
I probably would. I mean, I didn't support the 35. I might have supported a lesser amount at say 20,000. Is it too late to do that?
Probably better that's monthly because then we're going for the 2 and now you're going for the 1 on the amendment, but you're allowed to.
We'll just test.
So it's an amendment on part of the, yeah.
No, it's like you're doing two resolutions.
Yeah.
If we split them up, it would be easier.
Yeah, but you can still do it. I was trying to think that you can do it. So it's an amendment on the which one?
On the 35,000 to 20.
Right, so we got an amendment moved. Have we got a seconder for the amendment? Seconded by Councillor Grant. So we now discuss the amendment. It's chopped down to 20. Councillor McAtammy.
There's discussion, this same argument happened last year. Exactly the same, and you've actually moved it from 20 to 35. I think that was the request. Now you're shifting it back down again. Which is rather different. Yeah.
You've got too good a memory.
Councillor Catherwood.
Well, if I remember rightly, in the verbal submissions, the creator stood here and pretty much told us pretty straight that you've got to get the 35, and if you ain't got the assistant, then things are going to be changing. It was the vibe you got. You not remember us telling me, you know, won't be doing this anymore. So, you know, all very well, you can go and do a 25, but then create a 20, whatever. And I just go back to the day, remember what she said at the submission.
Councillor Grant.
Through you, I think it'll be a pretty sad day if we stop funding here. And let it be on your conscience.
So I'm now, sorry, Councillor Payne.
Yeah, look, it's a sad day. We've got our museum on life support, and I'm not quite as confident as Councillor Catherwood that it will look after itself going into the future. We know that all that historic stuff sits in an old building. It's not climate controlled, and in fact, it is currently deteriorating flat out, and it needs to be looked after. I believe actually it will resolve itself, and that we won't have a museum at all. And so I'm really disappointed we couldn't get the 35 across the line, but I will support the 20,000.
I'm sitting there thinking how the way we do it because the amendment was only to one part. So let's, in my mind, we are voting only on the amendment for the 20,000. Then if that's, what would happen if that's one? Then we go back to the second one for the curator. So you know that, wait a minute, if this one wins, then we no longer talk about the curator. We only go to the assistant.
You've got a resolution. I'm sorry.
It can be to both.
It becomes a substantive move.
We removed the 20, we're still leaving that we don't approve the 15. So
That would tidy my amendment up, your amendment up for where. So your amendment was that you'll reduce the creator by 20, but you're happy for the assistant to be at 0.
To be 0.
Right, thanks. Sorry, now, are you happy with that? Dean was the second one?
No, Councillor Grant.
You happy with that? Right, so that's the amendment, so know what we're voting on, and my apologies. It was going to get muddy when we moved into the next step because we voted for 20, going to vote for nothing. Can't have that double. So have we exhausted the discussion? No.
No. Just remember that you've got a sustainable museum example in your district. That community had raised over $2 million to create that. No handout. No handout in the rate plan. They stumped up with $2 million and created it sustainable to preserve their historical items. Just remember that. Maybe some of these other, come on.
Yeah, through your worship, just, it's very hard to be comparing the two.
No, it's
And I would
not.
just caution against comparing it because there's a guaranteed revenue to the Owaka Museum from council's services that are in there, which gives a guaranteed return. So just be cautious around a direct comparison. I think it's always you have to be a little bit careful about that.
Right, and I'm going to be real clear on what the amendment is. It is the 20,000 for the curator, 0 for the assistants. You're ready?
Yep.
We're ready to vote. So all in favour of the amendment, please raise your hands and say aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, your worship.
Those against, please raise your hand and say no.
No. 1, 2, 3, your worship.
Right, amendment's been won. It now becomes a substantive motion. Does anyone wish to add to the discussion on that? Or do we go to the vote? We're going to the vote. You ready this time, Julie?
Yeah.
So we recognise what we're voting on. We're aware.
Can you read down, please?
Yeah, Julie.
That council approves funding of $20,000 to the South Taker Historical Society in 2025-26 for the continuation of the curator salary funded from the UAGC. That council does not approve funding of $15,600 for the museum assistant salary.
Everyone quiet. Okay. Where we are? Put to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, your worship.
All those against, please raise your hand and say no.
No. 1, 2, 3, your worship.
Who's abstaining?
Someone was right, so yeah.
Jason.
You, Jason? I'm prepared to push it because we've got such a big day in front of us, thinking that we'll go to 1:45, which is only 7 minutes. It could happen. We'll give it a go. If I have to adjourn just so that everyone can have their time in the middle of it, it'll get a bit messy, but I will. But know that we're going to have a go at 7 minutes. Lil, do you have anything that you wish to add? No. Questions for Lulu, please? No. Matters open for discussion. Right. Councillor Lehman.
Someone's got to start it. I actually think this is a nice to have, and I would like to support the Waipori district. I see it as a good project, don't get me wrong, perfect project, but I don't know that it is a project for us to support in this financial year. So that's probably, and if, depending on how all this discussion goes, if say we didn't fund them this year, I would certainly be saying, please come back even next year. So even if, to me, and it's too soon for a recommendation, but we deferred the decision until next year's annual plan, perhaps we can have it that it actually does go into next year's annual plan for a decision, because I actually see it as a very worthwhile project.
Oh, I mean, it's flexible, your worship, in the sense it can be, can't be, depending on what they want.
Councillor McTamaney.
Just to comment on the costings of it. What's been presented to us too is an example of a 25-year loan. So if you were to do it, it's got a cost of $3,300 only to the ratepayers. So yes, you're saying it could be deferred, but if we did choose to do it through that mechanism, it's not going to going to be the camel that breaks their back.
If you loan fund it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Councillor Graham. So I'm trying to remember when we went on a bus trip out there as a council. It was going back into the archives, and at that point it was pretty marginal. It was things were rotting. It's not one of those things that is going to be around in a few years' time. In fact, Roger said, sort of a now or never last ditch stand. And as Councillor McTamaney said, $3,000 to have a go. Yeah, I could probably handle it actually. Councillor Graham, followed by Volwell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I can't recall, did Roger say that applied for other funding or anything through the heritage stuff or not?
I thought he did through you, Your Worship, but I don't think they'd had any confirmation. Or I thought he said that.
But there was an option for them.
Someone else had their hand up.
I think
Right, Councillor Volwell.
Just in the submission document, full cost of the project indicatively and estimated 79,900. The application seeking 50,000 fund phases 1 and 2 of the project and partially fund phase 3. The remainder will be sought from other funding contributors. So that's. Can I just add, dear, I support this. I don't think this is a one-off project. I don't think we should be putting this onto loan funding at rates. I think if we do fund any of it, it should be through our limited investment surplus, get over and done with, so it's not hanging over our heads for the next 25 years in terms of a loan. Whether it's the full $50,000 or a lesser amount or no amount.
I'm waiting for someone to throw their hat in the ring. Councillor Martin.
I'm not moving a recommendation, Your Worship. Unlike the South Otago Historic Museum, this artefact is actually out in the wide open spaces, so it's got no climate control. And it just doesn't benefit the Lawrence community. As Rogers, when he spoke to his submission, there's people from Auckland, Canada, all over New Zealand, Ireland, that have got a vested interest in this because this is actually culture and heritage. So I think it is well worthy of either way of how we fund it. If it doesn't happen now, it'll be too late. It'll be gone.
Who's going to make a move? Have a recommendation from anyone? Councillor Volwell.
Sorry, I'll just get back to the original document. I'll move that council approves funding of, let me go for the full amount. I'll try that. $50,000 to the Rory Goldfields Charitable Trust, 25-26 for restoration costs, etc., funded from investment surplus.
Seconded, please. Councillor Martin. Matter open for discussion. Sorry?
I'll make a statement.
Go on then.
As New Zealand, we're 150 years old, so we've got no historical value. We all race overseas to wherever around the world to see all these ruins and all these other things that we pay for. Put our air miles up there. Maybe it's time we stand up and start building our own. Bring them this way. Here's my statement.
Anyone else? I'll say I'm now nervous because knowing the overall situation that we're in today, if it had been put on a loan and drip fed through, but I think at 50,000 we're going to out of proportion with. Go back and have a look at where we've been tinkering and cutting, because I'm sure that a lot of people say this is a nice to have project. very worthy project, but it is a nice to have. No one's going to die if it doesn't happen. So in the overall priority of things for 50,000 to go here, when 20 went there and nothing went there, I think we're just a wee bit out of kilter. I could have handled the loan funding because that wouldn't have made the jot of difference. But I'm probably, Roger will shoot me, but I'm probably going to have to go against it because it's 50,000 straight up. It's too much. Councillor McCrosty.
Can we make an amendment to it?
I was thinking of that, then I was thinking of lunch. I don't really know what to do, so I thought I was going to test the market, but yeah, we could.
Just throw it out there.
All right, then. I'll do an amendment of 25.
Yep.
Seconded? Seconded, Councillor McCrosky. Amendment 25, discussion open. Hold on, if I talk, I shut up. Was that a something?
Yeah, 25 is definitely only half 50. That's a good saving. And then if you give Waipuru Golfers Trust, they're desperate to get this thing salvaged. He's a farmer. He can still do it for 25. Just put some pressure on him. So I could probably actually support the 25, which it does sound like a feel-good project, but that's what your budget is. You're a farmer, you'll produce it.
Councillor McCrosky, followed by Mackie.
Just one question, Brian. When you said the 25, was that loan funded?
No. No, it was actually going to come out the investment. Yeah. I'll roll it and see where it goes. It's against my own thoughts because it's the right thing. Councillor Mackie.
Well, I think it's quite sad that we've had this conversation and we've just cut the spending to a museum creator and everything like that. And we're quite happy. We fork out $200,000 to Dunedin every year. We don't contest it. We say we don't have a choice, but times have changed and our communities are a lot poorer nowadays. But imagine we could distribute that 200,000. We could have paid the rest of the money for the curator, but we're quite happy to just keep funneling that money to Dunedin. I don't mind paying if I go to Dunedin Museum.
So, Your Worship, as those councillors that have been around for a while know, it's an act of Parliament that requires us to pay that money.
You don't even pay.
There used to be discretion. There used to be discretion, and we used to pay more, and we pulled back from that to only what the Act requires us to pay. But we don't have a choice. It's an Act of Parliament.
So I'm toying with closing the debate. Is there any? So my thoughts are at 25,000, Roger will roll up his sleeves and get a krill in and he'll get going on it. He'll keep a wary eye, or not a wary eye, an eye on the investment account to see whether he comes back. He'll be cheeky enough to come back if he needs it next year. But in no way do I see this as stalling the project, and it's just reflective of where we are. It's more pragmatic than I want it to be, but that's where I'm at. So can I put it to the vote, please? You're right, Julie. All those in favour, please raise your hands and say aye.
You're hiding that hand, Councillor Living.
No.
Those against, please raise your hand and say no.
Come and check his pulse, Ken.
Okay, that now becomes the substantive motion. Matters open for discussion. No discussion. You okay for put to the vote?
Yep.
Put it to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Hold on, I'm not sure what Bruce has done. Yeah, Bruce has got his hand up. Yeah. Those against, please raise your hand and say no. Okay, so I will adjourn until after the council meeting. So what page? We're at West Otago Health.